180. All right, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the Earth Summit. Woo! Woo!
Stoked to be here with all of you.
My name's Esteban. I'm one of the co-hosts, of today, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Yes, with me. My name is Kestrel. I'm the host of a podcast. You also have a podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, you talk about your podcast first, and then we'll go around, everyone share about their podcast. One by one. Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
my podcast is not funny. I know yours is funny, but mine is about fashion and sustainability. It was the first one out there to kind of explore those two layers of the conversation. But yes, I'm so happy to be here with a funny guy because I feel like I'm always just like getting to the depths of the conversation and you can just like lighten the mood.
I'll try. I'll do my best. It's pretty light. If you read the news, nothing much to comment on. And my name is Esteban. I'm a comedian, and I host this really fun show on YouTube called Do You Even Care?, where we trap celebrities in a sauna until they care about the climate crisis. And it's a hoot. It keeps getting hotter and hotter, and you can find it online. I'm so excited to be here because I think this is awesome. This is like such a hopeful event. This shows us that there's another way to exist in the world. And something that I like deeply believe, okay, and this is serious. This is serious, is that like everything we do is a skill. Like I think hope can be a skill. I even think like smiling and laughing can be a skill. And that, like all skills, that means it can be enhanced. We can get better at it, which means, Kestrel, what I'm thinking to start off today, okay? And I grew up playing sports, so I kind of like a competition. What I think we're going to do today is we're going to start with a fast smile competition. Okay? Are you with me? You can't leave. You already sat. The panel will happen soon. Don't opt out. Lean in. Okay, here's what's going to happen, okay? I'm going to give you all the instructions, and then you're going to do it. Does this make sense? This is real, like real teacher vibe. It feels like a substitute teacher going rogue, and you're like, are we going to learn biology? I'm like, no, smiles. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to find a partner, and you're going to go with your partner back to back, okay? And then on the count of 3, I'll go 1, 2, 3. You'll turn and face your partner, and you and your partner are competing to see who can smile the most in 10 seconds. So the rules are you go full smile to full no smile. Like that. You're going to be smiling to no smile. Does this make sense? I'm getting a lot of angry stares. I'm getting a lot of people. I did not see this on the description. But our panelists will join, right? They're in. So then I'm going to count down from 10. So I'll go 10, 9, 8, and you're going to be keeping track of your smiles.
The scowls haven't gone away.
Yeah, they're still scowls.
They're getting meaner.
They're like, you know what else is a skill? Scowls. So that's what's going to happen. Do we dig that? People on the live stream, you're going to do this too, okay? People at home, just smile at your computer. Are you ready? Okay, let's find a partner. If you're able and willing, back to back, stand up back to back with a partner. Here we go. Kestrel and I are doing this. Here we go. Really good. All right, everyone. The first Earth Summit Fast Smile competition begins in 3, 2, 1. Turn and smile. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bow, 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 bow. Amazing work. Wow.
Impressive.
I feel that was really good. Did anyone get over 10 smiles? Anyone averaging? Oh my gosh. The two of you were really good. Perfect. Was that more fun than you thought or less fun? Scowls are gone.
They've turned upside down. Okay, I think I'm going to have to go and sit down and like take a break because my jaw kind of hurts.
Yeah, so much smiling.
Yeah. I'll be back soon.
Hey, thanks for doing that. I promise everything else will be normal. Thanks so much for being here. This is the third in a row Earth Summit. Isn't that amazing? Make some noise. 3 in a row, third year. And this is, of course, Commons annual event. Snap it up if you know Commons. Snap it up if you know Commons. Snap it up if you're like, I got Commons on my phone. Heck yeah. If you don't know, Commons puts people in control of their money and the impact behind it. Maybe you've heard of like Rocket Money or some of these things like that. This is that, but better because it helps you spend with intention. Okay, it helps you like see your impact, earn rewards, make more sustainable choices, offset travel, all these amazing things. And today, this is exciting. Have you been on the App Store? It's the app of the day. Ow! We did that. They said they would only do that if everyone here smiled. So that's exciting. And if you don't have it, do you want to? This is the app. You can download it. It's for free. You can use that QR code. And there's hundreds and thousands of people who are lowering their emissions by 12%. That's a big deal. And saving $200 a month on average. That is so cool. Outside of just the app, Commons also provides hands-on advisory for individuals and foundations and nonprofits to fund best-in-class carbon removal and offset projects. And if you want to talk to someone about Commons people, do you want to like raise your hands, make some noise? They're everywhere. Here, there, it's amazing. Look to your left, look to your right. One of them may work for Commons. If you're sharing about the event, we've got this teeny tiny hashtag, but that'd be so fun if you hashtag Earth Summit. That'd be so great. And you can tag Commons at Commons Earth and ThreadUp, which brings us to this gorgeous office we're in of ThreadUp. Snap if you've heard of ThreadUp. Snap it up. ThreadUp, listen, you know this. It's one of the world's largest online resale market for women's and kids' apparel and accessories, where they have roughly 4 million unique items daily, adding 60,000 items daily. We're going to learn more about ThreadUp today on panels. I'm staring at their founder, at someone that works there, but has like a confident energy. I'm staring at one of their confident employees. That's good. That's good. I'm so sorry. And today, this is the theme of everything today that we are doing is circular economy. That's the vision of this economic system that's like designed to keep products and materials in use for as long as possible. I feel like something that helped radicalize me and be like, oh my gosh, is the fact that nature has no waste. And you're like, wait a minute. Well, they don't have, what are we doing? So the circular economy is a beautiful vision of that and what that can look like. We also want to thank other people. Okay, we want to thank Ritual. Ow! Over here, Ritual on the next panel. And Kuyuchi. And we've got food sponsor Good Eggs. Did you see that? Good Eggs out there. I got a very fancy juice that I'm so excited to drink. They're keeping us nourished with delicious, it's plant-based, locally sourced food, and our media sponsor is Grist. Grist, give it up for Grist. Grist. Perfect. So here's what's going to happen today. We're going to have 5 different talks, okay? And over that, we're going to explore different aspects of the circular economy and what it takes to bring that circular economy into real life. We're going to talk about things like business and policy and community and sourcing, which we're going to talk about next. But before then, I feel like there's like personal experience like helps settle us in and ground us. And I feel like I mentioned this, like nature has no waste. Something else that radicalized me is I feel like the Rainforest Cafe. Do you know the Rainforest Cafe? I went to the Rainforest Cafe as a child and I was like, we gotta protect this. And then I found out about the real rainforest and I was like, no way, we should protect that one also. Rainforest Cafe is amazing. It dares ask the question, what if a restaurant outside were inside? I don't know if that makes sense. I do want to shout out Good Eggs. I think that's great because I looked up the Rainforest Cafe recently because I was like, I really love the Rainforest Cafe. Surely they donate money to a rainforest or something like that, and they don't. Isn't that wild? That felt like I was like, in nothing like they're not like they like I just feel like they should, right? It felt like a little bit of like my culture's not your costume, you know? Like I'm hugging trees, okay? I don't know if you guys are. And actually, I went there recently. This is true, and they sell a lot of beef products, And I don't know if you know that the Amazon is kind of largely being cut down. Like 80% of the deforestation in the Amazon right now is because of beef products. Isn't that wild? So yeah, you're like, we know. Yeah. So part of me is like, if Rainforest Cafe, if you're gonna continue, just really commit. Just really commit and be like, sir, would you like a hamburger? And you go like, yeah. And they go, great. Let me cut down that part of the restaurant. Let me, you know what I mean? Honestly, I thought that would be funnier. Are you picturing like a waiter going and cutting down a booth? Maybe not. Hey, speaking of things that are sourced, seamless transition. Absolutely perfect transition. This next panel, we're going to talk about sourcing. We're going to talk about what goes into the products we create, why it matters for our health and for the planets, so we can avoid what we all call the Rainforest Cafe conundrum. So here's what we're going to talk about in this next panel. What goes in has to come out. What does it mean and take to source sustainably? What should companies and consumers be looking for in ingredients and materials? And moderating this panel is Liz Seagram. She's a senior staff writer at Fast Company, and also Lindsay Dahl. She's the chief impact officer at Ritual, and also Margot Lyons from Kuyuchi. She's the director of sustainability and sourcing. So please give it up for all of them and our first panel on sourcing.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to be on this first panel with these amazing panelists. I've been a sustainability reporter for nearly 15 years now, and I feel like sourcing and supply chains get a bad rep. They sound so boring. Like we need to rebrand it because it sounds so boring. But I'm fascinated with these aspects of businesses because this is really where all of the interesting stuff happens. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm really excited to get into all of this with you. So it seems like it's a complicated time to be working on sourcing. There's a lot happening in the world. There's a lot of crazy news that I think makes it hard for consumers to be focused on where their goods are coming from. So there's not a lot of consumer pressure right now, I think, to be talking about sourcing and supply chains and things like that. And then of course there's like the actual nuts and bolts issues like tariffs and higher oil prices, which are affecting supply chains. So tell me a little bit about like the moment we're in and the kinds of challenges that you're facing now as people focused on sourcing. Margaret, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for that opening, and thank you for the introduction. That was that was very needed. But yeah, this is an incredibly challenging time. I don't think we can ignore that in sourcing. Literally every day is a new challenge. I can't understate just how severely impacted our businesses. So I'm at Kuyuchi and we make organic home textiles and we are importing them from all around the world. And so tariffs have been an incredibly disruptive time. I would say I've been at Kuyuchi for almost 14 years and I've had more uncomfortable conversations in the last 9 to 10 months than I have in the previous 12 years. Material costs are rising, chemical input costs are rising, labor costs are rising, transport is increasingly difficult. So this time is so important. It's really testing us in terms of how we look at sourcing, production, and other cross-functional areas of our business.
Lindsay.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Dahl. I work with Ritual, a women's health supplement company based in Los Angeles. I've been at Ritual for 4 years. And it was funny when I made the transition from beauty into wellness 4 years ago, it was like sustainability was so hot. Like you were talking about, like people aren't talking about it as much, and certainly within the business landscape. And it's like the volume has just gone like, on the consumer conversation. I also think we have less of an issue with tariffs, just given there's a lot of exemptions for the supplement industry that are baked within there. So like we're one of the few companies, or industries, I would say, that are not directly impacted, but I do think there's other challenges that we're facing. So the reduction of kind of consumer pressure for anyone who works in the sustainability field, even for a company like Ritual that has been building sustainable and making sustainable choices since the business launched 10 years ago, I use all of those inputs to help drive my agenda internally. So like, for example, like exploring refills for our supplements, things like that. It's like, I'll go to the CX team. I'm like, how many people have asked us about this? And then I like make the case internally or to our board of directors. So as people are more distracted, rightfully so, we've got major issues facing our country right now. It just means less fodder for me to be able to like flex internally as well, because there is like an ecosystem that people don't always see. Even if you get a really unsatisfying answer back from a company, trust me, people like ourselves are listening and using that to help make the case.
I mean, tell me more. I'm really interested in this question of consumer pressure and what's happening with consumers. What do you think is happening? I mean, I think there's this like very clear situation, which is that there's just so much happening. There's so many big issues to be worried about, and sustainability and the climate crisis is just one of them. But it really seems like, you know, like when I started this beat, like, you know, 10 years ago, my readers were really anxious to know more, right? And now when I write a sustainability story, nobody cares, right? What is happening, and what do we need to do to get people to care about the things that you're working on, things that you're talking about? You want to start, Lindsay? And then
Sure.
we can go.
I think people still do care. Actually, I know they do, which is good. Even if we look at our customer, every quarter we go to our subscribers. We are both online and wholesale and subscribers. And so we have this like ecosystem of people that we can tap into. And every quarter we ask them, why do you keep shopping with Ritual? And ingredient traceability, which is what we're known for, our commitment to high quality ingredients, remains number one, and it has for 10 years. So even though I'm getting less customers asking us these questions or like people engaging on social media around sustainability issues, the care is still there. It's just like if we have extra time, maybe someone that was like sending that email to a company is now calling their member of Congress about, you know, foundations of our democracy or like whatever the other issues are that are really taking up people's time. So I think it's more of like there's a finite moment in time, but even like the health of our business shows that people are still like, if our business was rapidly declining, I'd be like, oh, maybe this is an issue. But I do think there's still a lot of data points of businesses that are doing well, even with some of the headwinds that we can't control, like the supply chain.
That's really encouraging. And I imagine your customer is also very focused on sustainability. Like it's a big reason they would shop with you.
Yeah, totally. Koyuchi's been around for 35 years, and we continue to see people being interested, trying to understand and learn more about where their products are coming from, whether they're home textiles like what we sell or other related products, mostly textiles, related fashion. But I would say even personally also things like supplements. And so at Koyuchi, what we've seen and heard from customers is actually an increase or consistent, I should say, interest in natural materials. So maybe that's not necessarily all organic, which we do sell organic natural materials, but they're coming at us through like, okay, I'm reading a lot about PFAS or polyester and plastic exposure to my body, and I'm interested in finding alternatives to that. And so what does that look like? What does that mean? And, you know, what can Koyuchi offer?
I think that's really interesting. And I feel like increasingly there's been a change in kind of the way that we talk about some of these things where there are these issues that affect us directly, like you know, PFAS and the ingredients that we're consuming, and then there are these broader issues about the environment and workers and you know, the biodiversity of where we're extracting these materials from. And I think cleverly there's been a merging of these two things, right? Where if somebody is more self-interested, you can sort of get them with the argument about their own personal health, and then for people who are sort of like thinking about the broader issues, which is also self-interestedness, right? Like thinking about the future of the planet, that's something that affects us all. Would you say that that's something that's been happening where you've been sort of talking about these two things in conjunction, the fact of, you know, your individual health and how these products are affecting you personally, and also like the broader issues?
Yeah, I can answer that first. I mean, within like our company and like their sourcing approach, they're very much entwined. And so, you know, the way we're looking at like the actual material selection, which 90% of what we're selling is organic cotton. I'm looking at like what are some of the other materials we can add within that, but then I'm always looking at like who's growing that material, how is it grown, how does it become a fiber, and then from there, like making it into a fabric. Is it going to be a good fabric? Like how long is it going to last? Is it going to perform? And finally, since we are here to also talk and think about circularity, like what happens at the end of the life of this material? Like is it going to biodegrade? Can you use it for a long period of time? Like all of those for us at Koyuchi are like part of our matrix for decision making when it comes to sourcing. And what we do see on the consumer side is like varying degrees of that. I think the first level is definitely like has consistently been throughout my career, like customers being like, what is touching me and what am I exposed to during sleep or hanging out in my loungewear. But like an on and off focus of who then is also making it. What are the impacts to them and their communities? Like, is there any relation to my community? And so that is definitely happening. I think we're in a particular time where some people might not be thinking about that explicitly, but it definitely is happening. And I can see that in customers who reach out to us. Our PR firm can see that. Like, there's definitely questions around like who are at different points within the sourcing.
And Lindsay, are you because you oversee marketing as well, and so are you sort of marketing the better for you and better for the environment together?
Yes, and since we're in the supplement space, we kind of come at it from a slightly different angle. When you're shopping the supplement aisle, myself included, we're all highly skeptical at Ritual of the supplement industry, which is why I chose to work there, because it's like fun to kind of question and be that challenger, right? We really focus on the efficacy because there's still not very many efficacy requirements in order for a supplement to hit the market. But also, is this safe for me? And safe can both be planetary health or human health. And so, you know, a lot of people are like, well, why ingredient traceability? When we launched, you know, our founder didn't know if it was ever going to become an actual business. And she was like, I'm putting all of our supplier names, like the actual name of the ingredient suppliers and the final place of manufacturing on our website for our multivitamin. And everyone, like like the funders and stuff were like, what are you doing? Like, you're open sourcing who your actual ingredient suppliers are. Why are you talking about ingredient traceability? Like, no one cares about that stuff. And she was like, I don't care. Like, I just spent years trying to find these really good ingredient suppliers. Most of them have these awesome sustainability programs. I want other companies to use them as well. And so fast forward 10 years later, all of our products, all of our ingredients are, we have maintain this level of transparency. And I think what's fun for me as someone who also sees brand marketing but oversees impact as well is like we can use ingredient storytelling to talk about why something, to your earlier point, that maybe would seem boring to people or behind the scenes, like sourcing, actually meet the needs from a safety and sustainability perspective. So like the blue bottle out there, it's a skin health supplement. Maybe you take it because you want to reduce fine lines and wrinkles. But what I do when I do storytelling is, look, most of the wellness industry is sourcing collagen from beef from the rainforest to meet these goals of, you know, reduction of fine lines and wrinkles. And we actually went a totally different direction. And here's the ingredients we're using from France and where they come from. And so, like, I think people find that storytelling really interesting, and it helps them connect to the intentionality behind the brand. And I think making that shift, I think companies like ours have been making that connection, but I think we're just on the cusp of the general public making that connection. And I actually wrote an article about that this morning of, you know, there's this backlash to clean living and non-toxic living that's happening right now on social media. And I was just drawing the connection of, you know, you have to care about toxic chemicals and consumer products if you also care about sustainability. And to this room, it probably seems really obvious how the two are connected, but I don't know if the kind of public discourse is quite there, but it's definitely where we need to go.
Yeah, for sure. I think an interesting part of your job is you're constantly dealing with trade-offs. And just as a reporter writing about this and as a consumer, it's often a very complicated decision-making process, which material is better, right? Or which ingredient is better. I remember there was the story in the New York Times about cotton tote bags versus plastic tote bags, right? And like plastic tote bags, we're all sort of decrying them, or plastic bags, just any sort of plastic bag. There's all these problems with microplastics, right? But then when you look at the carbon emissions of making a cotton tote bag, they're a lot higher. And so for the consumer, it's a very confusing decision matrix every single day, whenever we're choosing anything. But this is basically like you guys' job, right? Like you're trying to figure this stuff out every day. So can you just kind of give us some examples of like how you're making decisions when there are all these like complicated things to be thinking about? Maybe we'll start with you, since you're dealing probably with the cotton question a lot.
I've literally experienced what you just said.
Yeah.
We ship a lot of our products in organic cotton bags, some of which are just like our sheets are sold in the sheet fabric bag. But we definitely looked at LCAs around like what is the impact of using fabric versus plastic. Right. And we were like, oh God, but why does the plastic like actually have a better, like, less impact than the cotton? And can we really do that? But in the end, it was like, well, we actually try to use as little plastic as we can. So it came down to like other factors where we said to ourselves, that's not something we're gonna use as little plastic as we can in our packaging.
And is that because you've taken a stance on microplastics or the toxicity of those materials, or what's kind of just determining that?
I mean, for us, like our brand is completely focused on natural fibers.
Okay.
And so, yeah, as we're looking at both our materials, our sewing threads, like everything that we're using as little like plastic as possible. We do use recycled poly bags. So this, to your point about trade-offs, is we have products that are either too heavy or like the margin just doesn't work to use a fabric bag. And so we are using recycled poly. We have had many conversations with the Sway team because I love what they're doing with those bags. So it's just like constantly trying to find like other ways to improve over time and not just,
And we need to find things that we can do at home with those little bags, that the sheets come in. You have to give us like a list of things we can do with them. But Lindsay, what about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think our jobs are constant trade-offs and like trying to decide what is the right sustainability choice based on your business goals. So like, is it waste reduction? Is it carbon reduction? Like you're going to go and make different choices based on whatever you kind of establish as a business as your North Star, and then openly communicating that to consumers. So like a good example, packaging is like easy one because that's the thing that consumers experience. But when I do the LCAs again of looking at a glass jar that we're sending every 30 days, like vitamins and supplements you're shipping every day, the carbon impacts of using glass is astronomical. So right now we're using 100% recycled PET from curbside recycling, giving plastic a second life, knowing the nature of our supplements. It's like a great format for it. Helps preserve the nutrients for their shelf life. But I know what the North Star is to have an initial glass and then you use a refill model. Like that's the ideal. And that takes time in order to like make the decision matrix and the math properly in a business environment right now where everyone's obsessed with how profitable you are. Or, before it was like growth at all costs. Who cares if you're profitable and you're in the hole? Like just do whatever you're going to do. That's not the environment anymore. So it just means you really have to play the long game and know that a lot of businesses that really care about this stuff, hopefully, probably have someone in-house that is playing this long game and trying to make incremental changes based on, again, what sustainable actually looks like.
So if I'm getting it right, you sort of have to pick a lane because it's impossible to make it all work all the time. And so you pick something that makes sense and that aligns with your business and you stick with that. In this case, it would be using natural materials. And then as you learn more and as more technologies emerge and so on and so forth, you just keep trying to move towards an even better LCA, basically. Okay, we're going to be moving to audience questions in just a second, but I just want you to start thinking about your questions. My last question to you guys is really part of what you're doing is a big part of what you have to ultimately do. Is it advocacy, really? Because as we were talking about at the beginning, none of this really works without consumers caring, right? Whether that's like at the point of sale or like more broadly, right? In terms of like, the materials that they're thinking about bringing into their lives. So like, what are you guys, how do you feel about, advocacy as part of your jobs?
Yeah, I want to definitely hear from Lindsay on this. But for me at Koyuchi, I think most of my advocacy happens to be internal. And so there's a lot of education internally that we're constantly doing with all the decisions that we're trying to make and the products that we're trying to move forward with, but also educating customers, because ultimately, like, yes, there's like so much information to sift through. And so it's definitely part of my job to help make the decision easier when you're making a purchase.
Yeah, I think, I was sitting down with a newer member to the field in my team, and I told her, I was like, 50% of your job is going to be trying to convince people inside Ritual why we should do this thing. And it's not because I genuinely work for businesses that everyone cares. Like, of course they care about sustainability. Of course, not all businesses are the way, but at least the ones that I choose to work for. And even with that, you still have to be advocating internally, and it takes a tremendous amount of time. And then the other 50% of the time is to do the work. But yeah, Ritual, I think internal advocacy is really critical, but we also use our business voice to help pass state and federal laws to increase the regulation and oversight of the supplement industry. It's really the Wild West, and we know, and there's a ton of trade associations working in a lot of different industries that are lobbying on behalf of all the brands we shop with every single day, and we think it's the right thing to do, to be a lone wolf, hopefully not forever, but at least now in the supplement industry, to kind of push against that tide, because right now the trade associations in the VMS space are completely owning the conversation, and so we're trying to create a little bit of crack in that, because this shouldn't be. Right now it is an access issue. We have a premium price point. And if anything I've learned in the last 20 years that's mostly been focused on policy, it's that when you pass state and federal laws, it actually helps level the playing field for products across all different price points.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. Audience questions. Yep. Are we passing a mic around?
Hello. This one is for Lindsay. So I'm a student that's studying marketing and brand marketing as well. And I had a question. What key messages or values are you hoping to communicate with your audience and clients?
Good question. I'm obsessed with messaging hierarchies. So starting from the highest level, what are you trying to say, and then drilling down. So solving those two consumer safety or two consumer problems, which is this safe for me and will it work, is the like kind of two pillars. And then we talk about the solution. So like drilling down in that hierarchy. Our ingredient sourcing is how we solve the safety and sustainability problems and solve that safety question. And we invest in human clinical trials, which is not industry standard for vitamins, and that helps us solve that efficacy problem. And so like kind of, I think from a brand marketing and product marketing, we kind of try to use that lens as a way to communicate all the different attributes of who we are and what we do, and we don't always try to do it in every single marketing material. So again, this sustained drumbeat of trying to hit different audiences at different times is what we try to do.
Thank you.
Anybody? This is going to be an adventure.
Hi, there's a lot of concern about microplastics in clothing, and for Margot, I think it's great that you're using all natural fibers, but my understanding is that even if you're using natural fibers, there are now finishes and dyes that are toxic that are sometimes added. So you're wearing cotton and wool and you think, well, I don't have a problem, but sometimes there are toxic chemicals added, and I'm wondering does that considered in terms of your sourcing and your production process?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Absolutely. We use a standard called the Global Organic Textile Standard, which is GOTS, and they look at the full supply chain. And so that's super important for us because it's exactly as you say, you can have a really beautiful natural material and then just dump a bunch of chemicals on it that either are not studied or we know there are known issues both for people in production and for people who are wearing or using the products, even when it's at the end of its life. So GOTS is really important for us because it means that like every single input that's going into the product is reviewed and approved. And so that's definitely something I would recommend looking out for if you're interested in looking for organic specific products on the market.
Can you maybe pass this over?
Hi, this question is for Lindsay. You say you do a lot of testing on your supplements. Do you test since you've made the switch to plastic, like using recycled plastic, for the impact of once it's packaged? You know, does that change the product in any way based on how it's packaged, whether it be plastic or glass?
Yeah, I love doing events like this. It's like the fun questions. The short answer is yes, we do. If we had, again, you know, I was in the beauty and personal care industry before supplements. If we had liquid or creams, hand soap, all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't be using that material. But since we're using capsules, we do test the finished good. We test for everything from like PFAS, you mentioned, plasticizers like phthalates, bisphenols, and we also test the raw material, the feedstock of the recycled pellets as well as the actual finish. So we kind of do testing, raw material, packaging, and then finished good. And then we also have third-party certifications that test for those contaminants as well. And another good example is like we make protein powder from regenerative organic peas sourced here in the United States. We have, instead of using jugs and tubs like most protein powders they come in bags. And again, when we did the LCA, we were looking at the trade-offs of carbon. And when we look at phthalates specifically, we found there was an issue of phthalate contamination with the tubs, but there wasn't with these bags. So it definitely steers the decisions that we make around the packaging material for sure.
I think we have time for one more question.
I'm Allie. I'm in the youth development pathway space and also work on AI and sustainability. I just want to thank you so much, especially for the intersectionality of this conversation and the complexity, and thanks for bringing that up. I feel better that we have smart people really thinking through this stuff. I'm interested in costing. I have an MBA from Mills College, it's sort of a sustainability MBA, and I've always been interested in how do we create inclusivity. Like I love buying Kyochi. I've done it once in my life. I can't always afford it as a single parent. I'd love to see how do we create more inclusivity, job pathways for people who are left out economically so that everyone can participate in sustainability. Any thoughts on that? I know you're more on the sourcing side, but I have to bring in Trump's economy, and walking in here, the first 3 people I talk to are out of work or underemployed.
I can start really quickly. I started as an intern, part-time, so we have relationships with schools in the areas. I love to, have students come work on my team or on other teams within the office. And then we do have, I will say quickly, we have a second home program. That's part of our commitment to circularity, where we take back everything that Kyochi makes, and if it's usable, we sell it. You can find it on our website, and those have reduced costing. I mean, I will recognize that still they're quite expensive, but part of that we hope is like understanding to like where those costs come from.
I would add, this is where the policy and advocacy work that we do at Ritual, I think, is really critical. Like we helped pass a transparency measure to require heavy metal testing for prenatal vitamins in the state of California, which becomes a de facto national standard. And so starting next year, anyone, regardless of how expensive or affordable a prenatal vitamin, will be able to have access to that information. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a race for those companies who don't want to be posting heavy metal test results for prenatal vitamins online, is to find better sources. And that comes back to the intersection between what we were talking about, which is, yes, someone can care about if something is safe for them in their home, and that's a worthy cause, but also, is this safe for workers in the supply chain, which is one of the kind of biggest intersections for certainly toxic chemicals and materials.
Yeah, let's do one more.
Hi. So the word non-toxic came up a lot, and I feel like a couple years ago it probably wouldn't have in a conference like this. And I think this space, meaning healthier materials, organic, phthalate-free, PFAS-free, used to be seen as this progressive landscape. And now it's kind of both ends of the spectrum politically are almost horseshoeing back into the center. And it's very confusing for me and confusing for everyone. And I'm curious if this has affected your sourcing, or if you have seen, these are kind of two questions, but choose whichever how you want to answer it. But I'm really curious to talk to more folks about how they're seeing a shift or growth in their demographics because of it, and if it's been net positive for you all.
I had to write a whole book to answer the question. I actually legit wrote a book that was exactly about what you talked about, which is the kind of, you can look at it two ways, either a bipartisan growing movement of people that care about issues like toxic chemicals. And I would say the headline for me is that, and I've been doing grassroots organizing on this for 20 years, this issue's always been bipartisan, it just now has a brand. And I wrote a book about toxic chemical pollution, but I spend most of my time talking about how toxic social media is and how it's the #1 most toxic thing in our homes, because the complicated science around environmental health has gotten really twisted. I don't know if it's been a net positive or not yet. Certainly from Ritual and the products we sell, our business is doing well, and I'm grateful for that. But I think a lot of the kind of weaponization of toxic chemical pollution, and though there's a lot of pseudoscience that gets in the mix, is now having a lot of people swing the other way, and it's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And as someone who works on environmental policy, I'm very concerned about that. So my ask for all of us is to keep talking about how toxic chemical pollution, yes, in our products, our air, our water, our food, is a real issue. Because if the audience, sustainability and safety professionals and individuals walk away from that because it starts to feel like it's not ours anymore, or yucky, or yes, there is pseudoscience, then we're really going to undercut a lot of the good work that's happened.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for being amazing panelists, and thank you for being here today. We can't wait to continue with the day and hearing other panels. Thanks.
Thank you all so much. And the next panelists, if you want to kind of make your way to the couch over here to get yourself primed for the next. Thank you so much for that conversation. I think that was a really great, powerful way to kind of end the conversation on that very heavy reality that we're all amidst right now. Throughout it, I was thinking so much about, so I am a mother, I have 2 kids. I have a 10-month-old and a 6-year-old. And I feel like for me, 2 of the top priorities that I'm regularly thinking about as a mother is, #1, like toxic chemicals and plastics. Like, how do I reduce the amount of plastic that's everywhere? Like, I don't know, if you have kids, like, do they go to birthday parties and then they bring home this bag that's just like full of like so many things of plastic? I didn't even know that these things existed. And then they pile up and I'm like, what do I do with it? How do I deal with this? It happens so consistently. And then the other thing is, how am I gonna get my hands on the next round of hand-me-overs? Because I don't wanna buy new clothes for my kids because they just, they grow so fast. But I like this reframe. There was someone who was on my podcast in the past, and she taught me, like, don't say hand me down, say hand me over, because why are we reducing its value when we hand it to the next person? We should, it doesn't need to be this sort of like hierarchical system. It could be like, oh, hand it over, keep it in this level, in this circle. So in any case, hand-me-overs are huge, which brings me to our next panel, which is very focused on the secondhand industry and looking at how some companies out there are really kind of building it into the way that they're doing business. So I'm gonna invite the folks up. We have our moderator, which is Sarah Shapiro from Puck. You wanna come on up? I'll hand you your mic after, because this is yours here. And if you want to sit down here, actually, so I can give you the heads up on when we're reaching the end. And then we have Alan Rodham here from ThreadUp. If you want to come on up. And we have Annie Agel from Cotopaxi, as well as Michael from Marine Layer. No, can you help me? So there was a whole thing, right? There was a whole thing, and it was like, here's the pronunciation. Yours wasn't in there. So I didn't want to say it wrong because people say my name wrong all the time.
I'm immune to it. It's Nate and Schoen, but it's really
Okay, Nate and Schoen. All right, great.
You nailed it.
Perfect. All right, here you go. Take it away, you guys.
Okay, thank you. Is this on? Yes, I think so. If not, I'm sure I speak loud enough. So I'm really excited to be here today. I'm based in the Bay Area, and so I always get really excited when we have really interesting events here. So thank you to ThreadUp and Commons for hosting this today. And even though we just did a little introduction, I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves again as we go through the first question, which is circularity means something different depending on where you sit in the fashion ecosystem. So starting with each of you, if you can briefly introduce yourself and tell us what circularity looks like or sustainability looks like for your business.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Alon Rotem. And Esteban, no, I'm not the founder, unfortunately. When the founder gives a good speech, afterwards I get him a soda and tell him he did a good job. That's usually what I do. So circularity at ThreadUp, I guess we got introduced at the very beginning, but just as a refresher, we are an online resale marketplace. We sell women's and children's clothing, and basically everything that we sell comes from the closets of all of you. So when you're done wearing something in your closet and you're ready to clean out, you can come to ThreadUp, you order a clean out kit, you can put anything that any brand that you have in the bag, and then you send it out to ThreadUp to one of our distribution centers where we've got our employees ready and waiting to open up the bag, inspect the items, and if they're in good enough shape to resell, they are available. As we said, there's 4 million items available at any given time online. So the primary business is a marketplace. And then a few years ago, we also launched a program we call Resale as a Service. And essentially what we can do is we can build resale programs for brands and retailers. And those can come in many different flavors. We can build a resale shop. We can build a take-back program. We can help them sell excess inventory that can't be resold as new, really with an eye to keep as much out of landfill as possible. And because our mission is essentially, as we stated, is to extend the life of clothing. So that's circularity at ThreadUp.
Hi, my name is Annie. I'm from Cotopaxi. We are an outdoor adventure travel and apparel company. We're a B Corp, and I'd say circularity has been pretty embedded in our company, thanks to being pretty embedded in our industry. I'd say the outdoor customer, I feel very grateful to our customers because the expectation of outdoor brands that our customers have always had is that we offer a lifetime warranty and that repair and resale be part of the model. So we've had repair now pretty much from our second or third year of business. And last year, to meet our customers a little bit more where they're at, we actually launched with resale, and proud to say we've, courtesy of ThreadUp, have been able to resell thousands of Cotopaxi items in 1 year and have a resale rate sell-through of 97%, which is pretty cool. And I'd say the work is still getting started. I'd still say we have incremental circularity. We're still not seeing replacement theory yet of resales replacing new sales. And so we're really committed as a business to trying to expand out of our 4 walls to create an ecosystem that's really needed and the behavior change that really embeds this in the mind and actions of our consumer citizens.
Top that.
Yeah, I don't think I can. My name's Mike. I started Marine Layer. We're a casual California apparel brand. Circularity for me was kind of with us from the start. I started the brand because my old favorite T-shirt, which I'd owned for 10 years and had taken to 2 or 3 tailors at the time, which is a very rare thing to take a T-shirt, but it's something I cared very deeply about, and I just wanted to extend the life of this garment that had meaning to me. And when it finally reached its end of life, I couldn't find something else like it, so I started Marine Layer and wanted to, remake that old favorite T-shirt. So it's kind of been in our DNA to try and be thoughtful about how we make goods and extend the life of things as long as possible. Resale is an important part of our business, but we also make a lot of things that don't have much of a resale market, right? Like there are t-shirts, there's a small subset of t-shirts are vintage shirts that are able to be resold, but a lot of what we're focused on in the market where we're trying to make a difference is upcycling, recycling, finding the greatest and best use for apparel when its useful life is done. And so that's taken many different machinations for us, but our Respun program essentially is a collection program for things that you can't really resell, and we work very hard with some of our suppliers to recycle those materials and turn it into a new yarn fiber that we can remake. So essentially we make t-shirts and sweatshirts from your old t-shirts, which has been a labor of love, but we're getting better at it, and I think it's an important part of a multi-variable problem that needs solving. So talk more about that.
Great. So sustainability is often talked about as values-driven choice, but you're all making it work as part of your business model. And so let's dig into the unit economics story and what it actually looks like, and when did it start making sense as part of the financial success of the business?
I guess I'll start. But actually, before I start, I just wanted to say this is so cool. This is like our living room of ThredUp, where we eat lunch and hang out, and just to see everybody here is pretty special. So you're all sort of part of the ThredUp family today. So thank you for being here. In terms of making money, yeah, ThredUp was started in 2009, so it's as old as my teenage son, and we've lost so much money over so many years. We're a public company. We've raised a bunch of money from venture capital and all of that, and all along the way, we lost money. And if you ever look at our finances, which are now public, you'll see that actually last year was the first year that we ever were cash flow positive. So it was a huge milestone for us. And there's a few people here who work here at ThredUp who have been here a long time, and they know the war stories because the company almost didn't make it so many different times. So it's a difficult thing for a company to sort of like invent a business and then watch it scale and watch it make money. But I think for us, really what it was an investment, right? We've invested over $400 million over 15 years in building our infrastructure. If I was to invite you to one of our distribution centers, and we've got 4 of them across the country, it's like 500,000 square feet of what looks like the Matrix, but it's all just clothing on 3 different levels, and automated carousel spinning, and cameras controlled by robots, and a whole bunch of artificial intelligence technology, and super smart data scientists who have taught us over the years which items we can accept, like how they should be photographed, what we should price them at. Like, it's really an extremely complicated business, and I think one of the reasons we've made it over 15 years is we didn't run out of money. Okay, that was the first rule of business. But also we built something really difficult to replicate. And so, now the unit economics work because we have so much automation in our distribution centers, and we've kept our corporate teams, our business teams as lean as you could imagine in order to do that. And I think when we were sort of like adolescents, there were other companies that were getting into online resale, and they would say like, well, you can really only resell an item if it's $100 or more, $50 or more. That's really the only way the unit economics work. But what we're proud to have done at ThredUp is really brought that price point down. Like, our average price point is $25 an item, and we sell plenty of expensive things too, which means there are lots of things that are under $10 an item. And in many ways, like, I think if we were to go back 10, 15 years, that would have sounded impossible to do from a unit economic standpoint, but figured it out somehow. Yeah. And it wasn't me. It was all those smarter people at ThredUp that have done it. I've just sort of watched on the sidelines.
Yeah, I would say there's so many things that go into unit economics. One thing is there's no 2 units that have the same economics, which is one thing I don't think companies really appreciated. And I'd say our space, repair has always been our first best option, and really understanding and starting to design products that require less repair. We're just actually launching our first roller suitcase, and not only does it have no zippers, zippers in particular are the most costly repair. It's where like 90% of products fail, and it's really hard to even recapture the fabric if the zipper blows. And so, you know, we're trying to go like zipper free in a lot of instances and actually facilitate at-home repairs with tools that everyday people are likely to have in a toolbox. And so really starting to think about circularity in the design and development stage, not just in the resale post-market stage, I think is really important, especially for products like ours. But I also think it's one of the reasons we moved with ThredUp, because we did have a lot of items that just the unit economics didn't make sense, and it was breaking my heart to see the fabric waste. And we're a small to medium-sized enterprise. We are not a publicly traded corporation. We are still small. And so I think being able to have a partner that also has end-of-life ecosystems, and so we've been able to do an upcycling project with one of ThredUp's existing upcycling partners. And so being able to tap into an ecosystem instead of trying to figure it out within your own four walls, I think is so important. It needs to be standard practice. I think one of the things that really moved me to join Cotopaxi was a willingness from leadership for me to spend 50% of my time outside of the walls of our company, really trying to think through, okay, how do we standardize practice? What does policy look like? And we're not perfect, right? I think it's really easy to talk about the things you're doing as a company, but that matters so much less than what's happening at the societal level. And so very grateful for partnerships like ThredUp that have made the economics work for, you know, 95% of our products, not just 50% of them.
The economics are tough, and we've certainly, you know, Respun, which is this big program, the first incarnation of it was not profitable at all. We were upcycling fibers. We were taking shirts through a mechanical process, essentially like chopping up light-colored yarns and then retwisting them together and then re-sewing those shirts. The quality was 10 or 15% below the virgin fibers, and the price to make that shirt was 10 or 15% more. And unfortunately, the customer willingness to pay was just neutral. Our customers, we're a B Corp, our customers care very deeply about the environment. They don't seem to show that quite as much with their pocketbook, which is unfortunate. So, you know, I feel like we're just paying it forward a little bit. It's not something that, you know, you just work at and the solution is there right away in a profitable thing, but it's something we believe in, and we're in the second iteration of our Respun shirts, and we've got scale and collaboration through our vendor partners and through our customers, and we've made that, you know, economic choice get back to more neutral. So it's something that we believe in, and if there's a recycled shirt or a shirt made with 50% recycled materials and a shirt with 100% virgin cotton, the customer is going to choose the recycled one, and we're hoping that some of that is showing up in kind of intangible brand affinity and long-term economic gain. So hopefully it works.
Yeah. We're going to talk about some of those data gaps in a variety of places where people aren't ready. But for this one, something that came up when we were preparing for today was that the majority of retailers the majority of retailers say that they know that they want to invest in circularity, but only 16% actually feel ready, and what even ready means. So I think if there's any opportunity to maybe start something beforehand, what some of those companies should think about starting to pursue something before the numbers are actually there yet.
I'd say start somewhere. Start with your biggest product. Start with your most popular product line. Start there. And I'd say start with repair and start with designing for longevity. I think that's really important to understand. And then I'd say look at partnerships. Don't try to build something that already exists. One, the economics aren't going to support it, but it's also, I think, part of there's so much opportunity, and where I have seen momentum and the ability to leapfrog and punch above our weight as our company side is through partnerships, right? And I think that's what also helps gain momentum around consumer. And then I also think companies that don't feel ready, no one feels ready for this. Circularity is still being defined. There's so much contention and debate in the sustainability space. And so I think to a certain extent, you just have to understand that it is an experiment. But there is a commercial lens to it for sure. I'd say our resale channels are profitable, right? And we do know we retain customer loyalty. And then I think especially if you start to show up around policy, just similar to what Lindsay was saying, right? We know that the Textile Recovery Act is coming. We know that there are a lot of acts like that around the world, and you don't want your business to get caught behind in that. And circularity takes years. It takes years to start building that. As Alan was saying, you know, it takes iterations, it takes investment. But you got to, I would say, I think it's a business imperative. I don't think it's going to be voluntary for much longer.
You want to go? Should I?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll just piggyback on that. I think it's okay to just start, right? Like you to try something, and if it fails, that's all right. You're still going to learn something. I feel like we're very much building the plane as we fly it, but you're ahead of the game if you're starting, right? What you were saying, that, you know, the vast majority of our industry is afraid to take action, and you know, I think that you know, what we try to do is leverage innovation and make it as easy as possible for our customer to participate, right? Like we try to make sure, you know, we feel like before we launch any new sustainable fiber or transition out of a fiber that's not in our sort of target sustainability bucket, we want to make sure that the quality is pari passu. It's at that level, and if it is, then the customer's going to be more willing to try it. And you know, there's a lot of great textile development going on, and a lot of great partners that you were saying that, you know, are leveraging all sorts of cool ways of innovation to, you know, to change that economic equation. And I feel like if you start there and make it easy for your customer, good things will happen.
How many people out here are you either like a solo entrepreneur, or you have your own business, or you work for a mission-driven company? Yeah, I mean, the majority of the room kind of raised their hand, and I recognize we're like a self-selecting group, but I think the point is a lot of this takes leadership. And so I'm sitting next to two brands that have not just like great leadership on that level, but also it's part of their identity to be sustainable. And so, you know, they're doing it at a pretty high level, which I have a lot of respect for. But for the rest of the brands that are out there that sort of didn't come to be in sort of a cloaked in sustainability, and now you're sort of aware that resale is like not just like a niche thing, but it's actually become a really normalized thing, and you want to sort of figure out your way in. I think their point is right. Like, one, you can crawl, walk, run. You don't have to do all of the things that Cotopaxi is doing today, and they're doing a number of things. You can do just one thing. And in terms of you know, building or buying, like, it's not surprising to me that only 16% of executives say that they're like ready to do it, when the majority of them are saying, like, we know we need to do it. Like, there is a gap there. And to that group, I'd say, you know, you have a core competency in your business. Like, for the most part, retail brands, you know, they have a brand, they know how to manufacture, they know how to design, and they know how to, you know, reach their audience. They don't have like a resale infrastructure built into their business model. And that's why companies like ThredUp exist, because that's literally what we do. And you know, we've invested so much into that, and it's so relatively easy for us to kind of turn it outwards and expose it to the retail industry, that it's actually not hard to get started. I mean, I think when a brand comes to us and says, oh, we want to build a multi-branded take-back program, like next year, we're like, you can do that in 2 weeks if you want to. So I think there's still a lot of education about how easy it is to get started, and admittedly, like, that's our job to make the case.
I think we have time for like one rapid fire question. So to wrap this up, I think since our topic has been operations, what would be really interesting, especially since so many people in here are either at mission-driven companies or solo entrepreneurs, if there was one unlock that you could solve today in operations for a circular business, a sustainable business, what would be the one thing you would want solved right now?
Government subsidies for logistics.
Yeah, I'd say policy. I'd just say policy around right to repair and durability.
I think probably if the average consumer in the U.S. was like everybody in this room, I think we would have a much different, much easier problem to solve. And it's just like getting that buy-in, and and I think we as businesses kind of have to lead the way, right? Like customers are smart and they can sort of suss out if something's authentic or not. And if we start and set a precedent, then hopefully folks will follow.
Thank you so much. And now I think we have time for some Q&A. Yes? How do we want to? I can run around the mic. Wonderful. So if anybody has questions for this fantastic panel here. Yeah, go for it. Heard enough of me.
Hi, my name is Audie, and I'm a recent graduate in design for sustainability and manufacturing. This question's for Annie. You mentioned that zippers are the worst when it comes to repair in terms of closures. For backpacks, I guess just even jeans, what closure would you say is better for repair when designing?
I mean, there's a lot. There's also new forms of zippers. Just to get technical, because I'm going to get technical, right? We actually teamed up with a huge group of brands to tell YKK that they needed to fix this problem, right? That's one of the most powerful companies in the entire apparel space is YKK. People don't think of that as a brand, but that's a very powerful patent. And so it actually took a huge effort of a lot of different B Corps, a lot of people in the space going to YKK and saying, hey, you need to figure this problem out. You need to make zippers that are replaceable, because obviously zippers are great and they were really designed originally by women to make it easier to get in and out of clothes. It's a cool story behind the invention of the zipper. So I do think zippers are here to stay, and there are places that's going to be really hard to replace. But for something like a suitcase, buckles. Right, so we have buckles that can be just pulled right on and off, and you just screw it on, screw it off, and it's actually harder to break into the suitcase. There's more security. It's lighter. So for that, we try to think really critically about that, and we have amazing product and design and development people at Cotopaxi. I feel like I get the opportunity to work with the best product team in the entire world. So there's a lot that goes into that. Buttons also, right? Buttons, I think lacing can work for that. I think there's a lot of alternatives that should be explored, and they're definitely out there. There's some great companies out there that are looking at alternatives, but I also think there needs to be business pressure on zipper companies. And so we'll see. I think we're 2 years away from newer zipper technologies that consider repair a little bit more actively.
Great, thank you.
All right, over here.
Hi, thank you for this panel. It was super interesting. This is a question for Alon. I'm really curious about your resale as a service offering, and I'm curious if most of your customers are partnering with you because it's a net new revenue stream for them, or if it's something that contributes to their overall brand value.
Great question, thank you. And also thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. 1 out of 10 people get that. So for resale as a service, for the majority of our retail clients who choose it actually think about it as a loyalty program. So we're extending our Clean Out Kit program to their customers. They are cleaning out their closets. They're sending a branded Clean Out Kit of that brand back to ThredUp. And as we process the clothing, instead of us giving the consignment payout to the end customer, we actually give that money back to the brand, and the brand gives it in the form of a gift card to their customer. So lo and behold, customers got space in their closet. They've got a gift card to that brand, and the upspend on that gift card is 2, 3, 4, 5x. So they got a $50 gift card. They're spending $200. Brand is super excited. We're super excited because our business is basically built on supply. So there's more supply coming in. And at the end of the day, we should all be happy because the customer is doing the right thing with clothes that they don't wear anymore. Instead of throwing them out, they're sending them to have a new life on ThredUp.
To tack on to that, because we are one of their resale as a service customers too, I'd also say we know for a fact from consumer insights that people don't just want to trade in a single item from a single brand, right? The vast majority of closet cleanouts are performed by women, and it's multiple brands, multiple items. And so we want to facilitate proper disposal and resale, not just for our brand, but for as many brands as possible. And so it increases our impact. It also, I'll say, ThredUp has a great customer base that we don't have. It's allowed us to break in a little bit more to mainstream apparel. And so there's also a benefit of Gen Z marketing. I think ThredUp does an amazing job with their marketing. Props to the rebrand too.
Thanks, Annie.
Hi, thank you for this. Obviously, a circular economy is where we need to be going, but I think ultimately the issue is overconsumption. So I wonder how you think about that as brands, creating new products, et cetera. How does that play into messaging, or, how you're thinking about the long-term, sustainability?
I think, durability, right? Like just making something, Annie mentioned this, but probably still the most sustainable thing you can do is buy or make something that will last 5 or 10 times longer than, a low quality item, right? So it's hard to swim too far upstream and go against selling things. That's our business. But I think if you do it in a responsible way and make good quality goods, then you're ahead of a lot of folks in the industry.
Man, I live with that question. It's the billion-dollar question. It's the trillion-dollar question, right? It's all I can say is I live with that question. I wish there was a better answer, and I think that's a societal shift that needs to happen, that all businesses need to be on board with, but we still exist in the reality we exist in. So how do you challenge while also solving and meeting the reality you live in? That's a really hard one. And I think, technologies like Commons that really help people connect their ethics with their consumption, with their wallets, I think is important, right? That's where creating this more ecosystem that is facilitating a broader societal shift rather than these individual incremental company approaches that are still based on consumption. Our entire business model is based on consumption. But I think thinking really critically about what you're selling, durability, but also trying to design products that I feel like facilitate a more meaningful life. I think it's one of the reasons I'm proud to be in the outdoor industry is hopefully people go do meaningful things with our products and they serve a function. So I think functionality is also important.
I just think it's a really good question because there's no perfect answer sometimes. Like, for example, one of the things we struggled with are, as Annie mentioned, you can put any brand you want to in a ThredUp cleanout kit. So you can imagine how many Shein items we get at ThredUp, and on some level, like we kind of view that a company like that as like our adversary and what we're fighting against. But on another level, we're like, do we want to just help it go to landfill, or do we think that also deserves the right to extend the life of that clothes? And so, from a business model standpoint, we really wrestled with that. And at the end of the day, we've decided we will accept those items because we don't want them to go to landfill, but we won't pay out on the item. So we're not we're sort of demonstrating to our customers that there isn't a lot of value in that type of item. And if they were to turn in something higher quality, say Cotopaxi or Marine Layer or something, they know they're going to get a payout for that.
We have one last question all the way back here.
Hello.
Hi. Hi. Thank you for organizing such a great panel. I have a question for Annie actually about the policies against repair of textiles and kind of the hurdles that you guys face within that in your company and just, reselling.
Man, listen, this is one of those skill sets that I wish I had. I do not have a legal background. I felt like 2 years ago, I had to have a heart-to-heart with myself about, hey, I need to be showing up for lobbying a lot more, especially at the state level, and I need to do a crash course, and props to Tony's Chocolonely in particular. They have an amazing lobbying team and were able to meet with me and just give me, hey, this is how we show up. We're really grateful to be very active members of the Outdoor Industry Association, and Patagonia at some level is our biggest competitor. They're our closest peer. I'm on the phone with their team probably once a week trying to show up for lobbying efforts. It's brutal. It's really discouraging. But there are businesses that are showing up. I think it can be grim in that it feels like it's the same 20 businesses that show up. That said, I think there are governments in the EU, and props to California, man. I love California. Not every aspect of government here is perfect, but I think the Port of San Diego, people do not realize how important of a piece of geography that is. That's where 80% of imports clear customs is through the Port of San Diego. And so California legislation is federal legislation, very similar to what Lindsay said. So I'm very active at the California state level trying to pass things like the American Textiles Act or Circular Textiles Act, lots of extended producer responsibility around packaging. Our wonderful packaging partner I see in the audience, Saloni, shout out Eco Enclosed. But yeah, so I think, right, like we all need to show up for that fight, and it's happening at the state level. And I think if you're part of a business and that's not part of what you've been focusing on as a sustainability officer, you need to make time and space to do that. Like we need to level the playing field. It's also a competitive advantage for businesses like ours because we are practicing circularity, and other companies should be. It's just like that's where the moral floor should be. So, but it's a tough fight.
We're gonna do the world's quickest question because I promised them. I'm so sorry. Oh, here we go. We're almost done.
We'll just answer it. Yes.
Yeah, one word, super easy. We talked a lot about the U.S. Market, a lot of consumers here. What is the international market that each one of you are really excited about for your brands?
That's a rough question for us because we had a business in Eastern Europe and we sold it about 1.5 years ago and decided to only concentrate on US until we could convince the entire population here to buy resale, and then we'll go international again.
Oh man, I don't know that there's a single marketplace, but we're certainly values aligned with Europe right now. Props to the EU for doing the right thing, and especially around circularity. They're definitely they're definitely on the cutting edge of policy over there.
Yep, same. Europe, I think, is the consumer cares about it more, and our primary fiber recycling partner is there, and they're great, and I think there's a bright future there.
And that's a wrap on operations panel. Is this on?
Thanks for sticking around and not going to the bathroom during our panel. We appreciate it.
All right, everyone, now is the time to stop talking and listen to the next person who's going to come up here. I had the immense privilege of spending some time with them last night. And wow, they are so wise beyond their years. They are a senior in high school. And I was like humbled in conversation over and over again. So I want to bring up one little thing that I feel like really kind of connects to the circularity conversation before I introduce her. And that is the idea of intergenerational knowledge sharing. I feel like it's something that makes me all warm and fuzzy inside when it happens and when I observe it. And I feel like it's about to happen here, which is very cool for us all to have the opportunity to experience it and to observe this. And I think it's also such a good reminder when we think about clothing, when we think about things and stuff in our lives. Like, we talked about repair and reuse on that last panel, but that's not like a new thing, right? Repair, resourcefulness, these are things that are embedded in culture. These are things that we've been doing for ages, and it's something that we can continue to do, and we maybe are iterating on it and doing it a little bit different, but it's not new. And we can learn from just looking back a couple generations, and we think about our parents, our grandparents. They were sharing clothes, they were handing them over, they were repairing things. So it's not so far-fetched. And I think sometimes we just need that little reminder of it's like very much in reach. But thinking about intergenerational sharing, I am going to introduce this amazing human. She is Oakland Vice Poet Laureate, Saheen Johannes, and she is going to share her award-winning poem. It's a poem that she said changed her life, which is incredible, and we're all going to get to observe it here. So without further ado, Saheen, come on up.
Hi y'all, my name is Sahena, so sorry. But my name is Sahena Johannes. Like she said, I'm the Oakland Vice Youth Poet Laureate. Please forgive my voice. I'm a little bit nervous. This is a huge deal to me, but I'm so excited. Thanks. So I'm actually breaking a huge rule in the slam poetry world right now by explaining my poem to you. You're never supposed to explain a poem. That's like the rule. But it's Earth Month. I had to. You gotta do what you gotta do. So I wrote the BART poem last summer, almost exactly a year from now, for a national youth poetry competition called Brave New Voices. The prompt, woo! The prompt we used, we were just kind of brainstorming ideas, was what's one place that feels like home to you? And honestly, I feel like public transportation in the Bay in general feels like home to me. I was born and raised in the Bay throughout San Leandro, Oakland, and BART has been so influential to me and my life and my livelihood. And I think it's one of those parts of, when we talk about climate and environmental justice, I think public transportation is such a huge part of it. And not only is it good for the earth, it's good for us too. So without further ado, this is my poem. I am afraid of any form of transportation that does not lead with its wheels. American Airlines could never compare to my friend Bart. I picture myself with him. Imagine I am in the back of a moving vehicle, seats a color palette of Skittles dropped in marijuana. I spend my 33-minute route to San Francisco's Mission District, embracing popped ears and parking lot views in the back of my train, fully confident in my obnoxious teenagehood when there's no one across the aisle. I lay my legs upon the seat to the left of me because I show my age. There is something inspirational about 70 miles per hour across a region I thought I'd explore to completion, and seeing a brand new tag upon the back fence of an abandoned parking lot, the Bay is my siren. It pulls me in towards murky waters of Lake Merritt and tells me I am in a spring. How can I leave the Bay when every good idea I've come up with was made on BART? I jot down one-liners whispered to me amongst my train stopping at 19th Street. Poems you could never understand. You will never understand the Bay if your blood has not bonded with it. If your roots aren't intertwined with those of Oakland's tree, you may not be from the Bay, but you could be adopted by it. We are intergenerational orphans taken in by 57 buses and double-doubles, and in turn, we respect the laws of the land. We drive forward when the light flashes yellow because our ancestors were never ones to slow down. We say thank you when we exit AC Transit buses, even if it was the worst ride of our lives, because you wouldn't want to be a bus driver in the Bay either. We go on and on, can't understand how we last so long. We are the protectors of a misrepresented region. BART is my protector. He picks me up at almost any time of night because he knows that I'm broker than a joker, and that $15 Uber is $14 above my price range. BART is misrepresented. People who claim they're from the Bay but haven't gone further east into Oakland than Los Pericos and can't explain or imagine what the streets of the hundreds look like try to tell me BART is dirty, BART is dangerous. They say their sons are 16 and haven't been on BART once. First of all, fuck you. Do you think that you're better than me because I've been riding BART since the 6th grade? I'm sorry that my mother of 4 and nurse to 400,000 of Oakland does not have time to be my chauffeur. Second of all, fuck you. BART is not dirty nor dangerous. He is my second uncle, twice removed on my city side. He is just eccentric. Third of all, do not refer to him as BART. That is a term of endearment. You shall call him Bay Area Rapid Transportation System and give him the respect he does not ask of you, but I am. Besides, BART wasn't made for people like you. He was made for people like me who were raised by their cities. I was raised by the automatic announcer waking me up from my nap saying, now boarding at San Leandro Station. I was raised by being taught to sit next to anyone young, anyone black, anyone female. Maybe if you weren't such a bigot, you wouldn't be so afraid. Maybe if you could balance the streets with your schooling, you'd be wiser. BART has taught me more than some of my classes. He's taught me discernment, not to stare, how to hop fare gates because BART is for the people. BART shows up late and he shows up loud, but he shows up for me always. And that just might be the most Bay Area thing about him. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, shucks. Okay. Now, it is my pleasure to welcome our next speakers for a fireside chat to discuss the role of policy, especially at the local level, in making sustainability a reality. So first, I have the pleasure of introducing Ahmed Ali Barb, who was an Oakland civic leader working at the intersection of technology, policy, and community investment. He most recently served as Director of Global Social Impact at Block Incorporated, where he led initiatives supporting economic opportunity, disaster response, and small business growth. In Oakland, among other roles, Ahmed was previously External Affairs Manager for the City of Oakland and Board Chairman of the Oakland Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce. And I would personally like to say that he has such an inviting energy, and I'm so excited to hear him talk. I had the pleasure of meeting him yesterday. I got quizzed on if I knew the difference between 12th Street and 19th Street. I'm so glad I passed. And now, please join me in welcoming the Honorable Barbara Lee, Mayor of Oakland. With more than 3 decades of leadership in Congress and the California State Legislature, she has been a champion for justice, opportunity, and communities on the front lines, including in the fight for climate and economic resilience. As mayor, she is bringing that experience home to Oakland, advancing bold, collaborative solutions to build a more sustainable and equitable future. She is personally such a big inspiration of mine. I'm a senior in the Social Justice Academy of San Leandro High, and she's such a huge inspiration for young Black girls like me who are going into advocacy work, going into politics, especially with everything back in 2001, how she was the sole voter on so many things against the war on terror. She's such a huge inspiration. So please join me in welcoming her and Ahmed. Thank you.
All right, Mayor, please. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're here during Climate Week, and we are here during the first Earth Summit event in Oakland, California. Can I get a round of applause for that? All right. And we're here to talk about how cities like Oakland are navigating growth, resilience, and long-term sustainability, all at the local level, not the federal level. We are talking local, all things local. And I am so honored to be joined up on this stage by Oakland's mayor, Barbara Lee. Round of applause for Mayor Lee. Mayor, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me to be here. And first, where's Saheni? I just want to say to our poet laureate, she said it all, first of all. Thank you so much. You inspire me. I just have to tell you, your poem about BART is so appropriate. Now, you all have to understand I'm working really hard to make sure that our transit initiative on the ballot passes so that we can make sure that we have our transportation systems, including BART and AC Transit, fully funded. So it's so appropriate because public transportation, I'm a member of the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, as public transportation is so important in terms of climate resilience and in terms of protecting our planet. So thank you so much for that. That is such a way to begin this conversation. Let me just say a couple of things. Well, let me say, first, Kestrel, Sanchali, James, Ahmed, of course, and Alan, I want to thank you all for inviting me to be here. Thank you so much. And I just have to start by saying, can I start and tell my little story real quick? Okay, this is really, and I don't like to get personal too often, but I think this may be, for Thread Up at least, a little, a reason why I believe being here in Oakland is so important for all of us, but also for me personally. My mother used to call me a pack rat, first of all. I loved clothes, But what I'm wearing today, you know, I was a part of the slow fashion caucus in the United States House of Representatives. They said I was the queen of that. But what I'm wearing today, I wore when I was sworn into Congress in 1998 by Newt Gingrich. Now, I want you to know that. And then my little necklace here, in 1982 or 83, my mother and I went to St. Thomas, and I had all these chains from when I was a little girl, because I loved jewelry. And I just kept those chains. And I said, I don't know what I'm gonna do. My mother said, would you get rid of them? I said, no, I'm gonna just take them with me. Went down to St. Thomas, found a jeweler who melted all of these chains for me, and I had some stones that I bought in Zambia, and so he put these stones right on here. So this is a bunch of just melted chains that I had from childhood. So I share those stories with you because this is also about climate, and it's about making sure that sustainable in our personal lives, as well as in our city, as well as in our planet, is addressed as a priority. And I'm a person of faith, yes, and I was taught as a child that God created the heavens and the earth. And so it's my responsibility to help protect our planet, just a personal responsibility. And so I just want to thank all of you for your commitment to a sustainable economy, to a green economy, to making sure that our young people have a pathway into, of course, the jobs of the future, which is in the green economy. Now, are we supposed to stop now and watch this little video that's on Instagram with regard to my ThreadUp initiative? Are we doing that
Who got
now?
the video queued
Who
up?
has it?
Cue it up.
Anybody? Because I want you all to see my very first ThreadUp project. You can just go to Instagram and look at it. Okay, just pull up Mayor Barbara Lee. You can see it on Instagram. But I want you to check it out because that was my very first little project with ThreadUp that I'm excited to see how it does. And so thank you again, Alon, and thank all of you for being such visionaries and for being such good business people, corporate people, sponsors here in the city of Oakland. Thank you. Okay.
That's right. That's what we call link in bio, my friends. All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? We got a good conversation here. So, Mayor, I just want to start by saying you've been really clear that Oakland is on the move. What does that mean in real terms for our residents and our small businesses right now?
First, let me say Oakland is on the move, but we have to make sure that the foundation is reset in terms of public safety, in terms of illegal dumping, in terms of our homeless population, and in terms of jobs and economic development. And when I campaigned for mayor, those were my priorities, and I'm sticking with them. First, on public safety, our crime rate is going down, but if you're a victim of crime, and if you have seen what takes place here in Oakland, you don't believe it. But we're one of the cities where the crime rate is going down on all categories, in all categories. And so we have a comprehensive strategy, the Department of Violence Prevention, Ceasefire, and our OPD. We all work together, and we have trusted messengers and life coaches who know the streets really well, and they get out and help prevent crimes. And so gun violence, making sure that we have addressed gun violence, and we are on a regional basis, and making sure that we get these guns off the streets of Oakland. And we're making progress, but I'm telling you, it's difficult. But when you look at the numbers, and when you if you can believe the numbers, and let me tell you, I want you to because I don't believe them, but so I hired someone in my office when I first was elected to double check the numbers and the data, because in Oakland, our systems are a bit outdated, but I can verify, the Attorney General has verified that crime rates are going down here in Oakland. So Oakland's on the move, but we still have a lot more to do. On illegal dumping, I tell you, it is really this is a 30-year unfortunate phenomena in Oakland. It didn't just start last year or the year before. This is 30 years, 3 decades of people dumping trash on the streets. And so it's got to be cleaned up, first of all. We've instituted Keep the Town Clean. Young people, faith community, organizations, Our districts, our city staff are out cleaning up this city on the weekends, overtime every single weekend. But we also just passed an ordinance with the council to increase fines to $5,000. We have to have code enforcement, we have to have education, prevention, and we've got to hit it on all fronts. And we have several investments that have come to Oakland to help us on cleaning up illegal dumping. And some is, you know, I just have to say, some of this is dumping by people who come from outside of Oakland because they don't really think we deserve the dignity in our neighborhoods and the residents, so they just come and dump, but also residential dumping. People here in Oakland oftentimes go to encampments because, once again, this is about the dignity of people in neighborhoods, and just dump near encampments. And people who are living on the streets, you know, we have to make sure these encampments stay clean, looking to how we provide more shelter and housing. But in the meantime, we've got to keep Oakland clean and keep these encampments clean. And we have to make sure that these illegal dumpers who rent trucks, they go to residents, they charge people an arm and a leg to take their trash away, and instead of taking it to the dump, they dump in the streets. So I'm just saying there are like at least 7 or 8 different initiatives and barriers to cleanliness that we have to engage in. Finally, waste management. You know, here in Oakland, our trash cans are smaller and we're charged more. So we're in the process now of negotiating, renewing our contracts with waste management so residents can get the type of trash bins that they deserve based on the fees that they're paying to waste management. So again, this didn't just start overnight. And we're working finally on a bill that Senator Arreguín is supporting and introduced on behalf of Oakland, but it's going to have a statewide effect where when it's about education, prevention, code enforcement, but also increasing fines. So when people who are the bad actors continue to dump, when they go to re-register their car, they won't be able to re-register it, and they won't be able to get their driver's license. So this is a tough effort that we're engaged in, but it's 30 years in the making. Hope you all join us because people deserve to live in dignity. This is an environmental hazard. Some of the garbage is toxic, it's poisonous. And we're trying to make sure that we have enough environmental managers to test the material, because then we can enhance the penalties from a misdemeanor to a felony. And we need a few felony convictions. And so we're doing that, and we're on the move. But it's a heavy lift, so join us in this.
Absolutely. And Mayor, I just have to say, from my vantage point, something that I've really appreciated about your tenure so far is your emphasis on partnerships. Particularly with folks in the private sector, bringing in investment from some of our homegrown and home-based corporations like PG&E and other folks to be able to support the cadet program that has been able to bring in young Oaklanders to help clean up and make sure that the city is safe.
Thanks, Ahmed, for that, because, you know, and that's important, public-private partnerships. The cadet program is a program that we talk with Kaiser and PG&E about. When young people go into the cadet program, and we're partnering with Merritt College, it's PG&E and Kaiser in the city, we need more police officers. Young people from Oakland go into the cadet program, which had been halted for years. 90% of them who graduate from the cadet program end up as police officers versus 60%. So this cadet program is really important. In terms of our public safety strategy and in terms of making sure that we are able to hire more police officers who are homegrown and who are from this community.
And Mayor, I would just say, I think what you're talking about is the prerequisite conditions for a strong local economy. And I want to focus a little bit on that. When you think about Oakland's economy, where are you seeing the most traction right now that folks might be overlooking?
We're seeing some traction right here in downtown Oakland with the Samuel Merritt University. I mean, it's like we'll have 2,500 students down here downtown We're working on a variety of strategies with the university for housing. We'll have people going to school right here, and other cities are trying to get campuses in their downtown. So not only is it a great educational institution, they're focused on health equity, but also it's a force multiplier because it's going to bring more economic activity into downtown Oakland. Secondly, our artists and our cultural community. Again, we were able to finally get back into the budget the funding for our cultural affairs manager, which is extremely important because we need activations. Jack London Square, in our neighborhoods, downtown. And artists and our cultural community here, that's the heart and soul of Oakland. We're known for that. I mean, look at look at Ryan Coogler, look at Delroy Lindo, you know, sports. Look at Elisa Leo. I mean, you know, we have to garner that because it is a force multiplier also. In addition, I've been working hard to bring conventions here and businesses here. We brought 2 new banks here. One is Amalgamated. We'll be kicking that off pretty soon. They're already, have you been? They're downtown here. We're bringing a couple of banks. We are bringing, we'll be a host city, if you haven't heard, for the World Cup, which brings economic activity. The Australian team will be staying here in Oakland. They'll be practicing in Alameda, but that was work, heavy lift. We also, I went to Roger Goodell and we got the NFL to designate Oakland as the official watch party city. Of course, a lot was happening in San Francisco, but Oakland was the official city for the watch party. We had to raise $250,000 for that. And so that's another, you know, bringing in organizations, conventions, and businesses to help generate new revenue is extremely important. The Port of Oakland, we were able, you know, I mean, this is like ridiculous that we have so many vacancies down at the Port of Oakland, but Senator Erdogan and myself, we worked on the legislation where now you can lease a business, you can lease one of the spots in Jack London and you don't have to be a maritime industry. Before it had to be maritime related. Now, you know, a grocery store or a nail shop or toy store, whatever, can rent space at Jack London Square, which would be, it's going to be really great. And we have a lot of people calling now, a lot of businesses calling to look at that. So I could go on, but I won't, because it's extremely important to have more economic activity here in Oakland because we have to set the foundation, clean streets, public safety, engaging our young people as the basis for further development of this beautiful town.
No, that's great, and I'm in particular very pleased to hear about the future investments in Jack London Square, just making sure that we're leveraging our physical assets. We have a beautiful waterfront, and we need to be able to monetize that like all great cities do. I want to pivot.
Oh, also, let me just, back to climate on Jack London, excuse me. When I was in Congress, I was able, through the infrastructure bill, to bring in over $400 million to green the Port of Oakland. Okay, so the trucks and everything down there now, because of President Biden and Barbara Lee, we're doing that in terms of climate. So just so y'all know.
Definitely talk that talk. I want to pivot a little bit more to climate with our remaining time here. And Oakland has long been a leader on climate, as you know very well. How do you lead at a local level when federal momentum is, let's just call it, uneven right now?
Yeah, it's totally upside down. It's uneven, and there barely is a federal government left. And so we have to really hone in on what we can do locally. A couple of things. Greening Oakland, I always say, and I said earlier, Curitiba, Brazil, I was down there several years ago, was considered the cleanest and greenest city in the world. I'm a member of the Mayors Association, the Bloomberg Harvard cohort, where we have about 20 mayors from abroad, 20 mayors from the United States. So I was just with the mayor of Curitiba, and I told him I wanted Oakland to beat them out in being the cleanest, greenest, and safest city in the country, and that's what we've got to do. Well, we are under-resourced here, and we have a huge wealth gap, and we have a lot of poverty, a lot of childhood poverty. Couple of things we need to do that I'm working on. One is in many of our neighborhoods, we don't have charging stations. In under-resourced neighborhoods, so I've been talking to the faith community about how can we get charging stations in parking lots, just so people in low-income neighborhoods can begin to electrify and buy or lease cars where they don't have to pay for gas, right? So that's one effort. So there's some equity issues in what we have to do here in Oakland. Also, when you look at environmental cleanup, there are neighborhoods right now that we have to clean up, and they're poisonous. I mean, with lead in water, we have toxic pollutants in the dirt. We have a sustainable strategy here in Oakland to green the entire city. And so we're working on that, but we've got to do this in neighborhoods that are polluted, and health impacts are really important in terms of climate initiatives. I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, in a neighborhood. It was an immigrant community, black and brown community, and a company cited the Sarco smelter there. And you can read about this online, but it emitted pollutants because our neighborhood was black and brown, and they put it there. My mother developed COPD. My sister developed MS. My grandfather, bronchitis. I mean, people died young because of that. And here in Oakland, we have many neighborhoods that we have got to clean because the health impacts, like down in West Oakland, the indicators show that people, you know, lung cancer, more prominent there than anywhere else in the city. So that's part of it. What we have to do here in Oakland is factor in the health impacts of our climate initiatives.
Mayor, we've covered so much ground in so little time. I'm getting the sign that we've got about a minute left. So I want to close on this. How do we make sure that we're enshrining this progress, that we're protecting it so that it lasts beyond any single administration here?
And it's got to, let me tell you, it's got to be structural, first of all. I am in the process of disrupting and dismantling structures that have been so systemic in Oakland for decades. And so we have to do that and build new systems here that make sense. Now, of course, charter review is one of those, and I hope you all understand that we've got to get to charter review and get the public to support a strong mayor form of government. Right now, it's a hybrid. So we've got to develop a charter that gives council members the authority and the power to deliver services, and the mayor the power to hold, for the residents to hold the mayor accountable. And so systems change and structural change is extremely important. Also, partnerships. We have got to make sure that working with the Big Four, with small businesses, that that they're invested in their success, and they're invested in our success. And so that's why the partnerships with the private sector and philanthropy is so important, because what I'm trying to do, and it's working, tearing down those silos between like public works and transportation and human services, so that we can be one Oakland internally with the city. So when we work with our private sector, they know that they have some stability with working with a city, and that's extremely important. So it's like from ground zero that we're working to reset some of the systems that need to be sustained no matter who is the mayor and no matter who is on the city council.
Well, Mayor, I want to just say thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your clarity. And for everyone here, this doesn't work without cities, businesses, and communities all moving together. So I hope you all take that away from this conversation. Appreciate you all being here, and enjoy the rest of the program.
And let me thank Commons and ThreadUp and Alon and everyone for this. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks a lot.
Getting to hear your fit check was like the most amazing thing. I don't know if anyone else was really into that, but I was. I mean, come on, the stories, that's what it's all about. Thank you so much. What an honor to have you here. And thank you again, Sahena, for the amazing reciting of the BART poem. Wow, and we're just getting in here to so much about systems change, which I think is a really big part of this next conversation. When we think about money, because where we spend our money, how we spend our money, how we do not spend our money, all can have a big impact on the systems around us. I want to just share a little anecdotal story that I know about Sanchali, the founder of Commons. because I love thinking back to the origins. So when this company was it wasn't even like a real idea in her head yet, but Sanchali had a spreadsheet and she would put everything in there that she spent. So it was like tracking where she was spending her dollars and at the same time tracking her carbon emissions. And I just love imagining this because like she's a data nerd, like that's what she is, which I think is incredible. And that is the origins of this company, which has become now a fintech company, like really helping us all do this in a much easier way than going in our Excel spreadsheets. But I think that that's just like an important origin story to understand and remember as we get into this next discussion about personal finance. We're going to explore more about how we can think strategically about our dollars, where we can spend them, where we cannot spend them to make an impact. So I want to welcome up our moderator for this one, which is Mike Horn from the Washington Post. And then, as I mentioned, we have the founder of Comments, Sanchali Paul, is going to be up here with us, as well as financial educator Berna Anat.
Well, thank you, everyone. So, does anyone here not use money? All right, you're in the right place. So we're here to talk about affordability and sustainability, and we want you to leave with a better understanding of how to make good decisions around that. What does that mean, and how do your personal decisions matter, both for yourself and for the world? But before we do that, I want to just set the scene a little bit around affordability. I'm sure you hear this word being bandied about because it will hopefully win elections, potentially. But the reason is that because does anyone guess the last year, or what was the year when purchasing power parity, like what was your average dollar could earn more? When did that stop increasing? Any guesses? How about a decade? Exactly, 40 years ago, 1978. Your dollar, the average dollar earned by the American worker, hasn't increased in purchasing power since 1978. Along with that, we've seen more higher earners earning more, but the average worker has earned less or the same. On top of that, we've seen prices increase. So think about all the things you need to pay for just to exist. Housing, food, healthcare, mobility, insurance. How much of the average paycheck does that consume before you even get a chance to spend anything else? How much? 83%. Did you write notes? That's impressive. 83%. So you're only left with 16%, not just to spend on things you want, but for savings, for emergencies, for everything else. And so in that kind of environment, sustainability, the environment itself, usually takes a back seat, but not for our guests here. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to take questions that you guys have. So they not only are experts in their domain, but they walk the walk. So I'll introduce you both. Sanchali. You already heard a bit about her company. So she's the founder and CEO of Comments. It's the first fintech app that gives people tools and information to save and spend on the world that they want to live in. So it's been named the Time 100 Most Influential Company, Apple App of the Day, and Fortune Impact 20 awardee. And we'll hear more about your personal journey as well. So Berna Anat, she's a financial educator, author, producer, and rich auntie in training, and self-proclaimed financial hype woman. And she's made her way up by basically understanding financial education media for young BIPOC. She taught herself how to pay off $50,000 in debt and is the author of Money Out Loud, All the Financial Stuff No One Taught Us, and a creative producer at Monarch Money. So I want to start with a question of maybe what the definition of what sustainable money even looks like. I think it's, for some people, a contradiction in terms. So how do you guys think about that? What is it?
Well, I think money is a tool. In and of itself, it's not sustainable or unsustainable. It's a thing we use to get the goods and services we need and want. And the choices we make and the systems that we're a part of determine whether our life is sustainable or not. So I really think about like sustainable money, meaning how do I get stuff in a way that's good for me over the long term, like I can sustain it, and that if everyone in the world did this, the world would be a better place. The world can sustain it.
When I think about
sustainable money, I think about violence. I think about money as a weapon. I think, like Sanchali was saying, money is something that can be neutral, it's a tool, but I think it is our sharpest kind of like machete. I think of machete, I think of my ancestors literally wielding machetes. It is our sharpest machete under capitalism. Capitalism is such that it works under the golden rule, right? He who has all the gold makes the rules. But we have gold in our pockets too. And the gold in these mofos' pockets are our gold. We gave that to them. We lined those hose pockets. And so when I think of money in general, I think it's the absolute strongest weapon we have to get those in power to listen, because they don't listen to humanity. They listen when we affect their profit margin. And I think sustainable money is sort of just one and the same. If you give a crap about the earth that you live in and you give a crap about the community that you contribute to, it should be sustainability and circularity in your finances should be foundational. But it's not something that's taught a lot, and money in general, personal finance is something that's not taught either. So I think a lot of us are learning as we go.
So when you think about the impact you have by making these decisions, is how much of this is about your values and what it means to you and your personal circle, and how much of this is actually systematic change? Or is that maybe not the biggest part of the impact you're having?
I would say that when I sort of hear that question, like, is it up to me? Is it the systems? I always think about how we are the system. So much of what is afflicting us, so much of the power, the imbalanced power structures, these are choices made by humans. The fact that capitalism didn't exist 500 years ago, and then a lot of powerful people made fucked up decisions, and here we are. But I think about the fact that we have power inside of those systems to all make different decisions together, collectively. And so when you make an individual decision to be more sustainable with your finances, to vote with your dollar, you are affecting the system as well. Because again, the dollars in your pocket tell the world and tell those in power what you care about. So I think they're one and the same. You're part of the system, you affect the system, and we each have the power to change it, because a lot of this shit is made up.
Yeah, and I think the people who are in power, sometimes it's very convenient for them if we forget that. Like if they tell us like, oh, you're just one person, you should really trust me. I'm the one who has all the power. Or companies, if we let them believe that they control things, we forget that we actually have the dollars and the votes that allow them to create the markets and create the systems that we're a part of. And I think like that belief in fragmentation, that individual choices don't matter, is a very convenient narrative for power systems that want to be able to continue to accumulate and enforce power. So by going to vote, by thinking a little bit about the choice we're making when we're at the store and choosing this instead of that, or choosing not to buy, choosing to share, those choices are small acts of rebellion that together add up to something really strong.
So, Sanchali, all the data you have, how many bits of data here? How many transactions are you actually tracking per month or year?
We're tracking millions and millions of transactions.
Okay. So quite a bit.
Yeah.
So are you finding that companies are approaching you and actually trying to change behavior around that? Or do you find that it's more peer-to-peer, that other people are seeing what others are buying and changing? Where do you see the leverage?
Yeah, it's been super interesting to start to see companies pay attention. As our user base has grown to hundreds of thousands of people now, it's something that companies are starting to pay attention to. So people from companies are emailing us. Often sustainability teams or marketing teams are the ones who email us because they want to have a pulse on what consumers are thinking. And they ask us for data on what percentage of people are shopping thrift? How much is that driving people's decisions? Especially, we've been seeing a lot more movement towards refill, and especially more sustainable cleaning and personal care things, where people are worried about the things they're putting on their skin or they're bringing into their homes. So we're able to give real data points on dollars and how that's changing to brands. And often those are people within organizations who want to be able to advocate for that change, but they need numbers to back it up. So they're able to use those dollar figures and go to their board meetings and say, hey, actually, this is something that we should invest in.
So is it the fear of losing dollars or the greed of gaining them that you think is the most impact for them?
I mean, I think that fear is a little bit stronger in terms of you don't want to miss out. If all your competitors are moving into refill or thrift, you don't want to be the last one there.
One of my professors described capitalism as fear versus greed, and they just change places. And so So how did you guys get here? You know, obviously, I think everyone here is concerned about it, but you've made it your career. So what was your journey there, and why have you done that?
My journey to finance was butt backwards. I was born and raised in the Bay Area. I live here in Oakland. And I was a words girly. Like, Sanchali's our data girly. I'm all words and feelings. I wanted to work in magazines, if anyone remembers magazines. Vintage. And I think what happened to me is what happened to a lot of millennials, which is you found yourself in the middle of your 20s and adulthood chasing a dream, like saddled with financial debt, credit card debt, student loan debt. And then I also did what a lot of millennials do, which is try to Google University your way out of it. And so just me hitting the mean streets of Google and trying to figure out, you know, I'm first-gen daughter of immigrants, and we did not learn at all what a budget was, what investing was, and all that stuff. And so I'm like, how to budget, what is index fund? And I like to say that what I found there, all the educators, the podcasts, and like even the recommendations folks had for me was hella male, hella pale, hella stale. Woof. Better now than like 10 years ago. But I essentially found myself in finance out of spite, just out of like, this is weird and strange that the only people we're learning about basic personal finance, how to budget, what is a credit card, how does interest work, are people who don't look like me, feel like me, talk like me. So that's how I found myself here. And I consider myself very much still learning about how sustainability and finances intersect. And every day I'm like, Jesus, it should have been one from the beginning. So I'm hoping to just try to fill in the gaps, but learn so much also from my panelists.
Yeah, I mean, as you heard, my path in was definitely through economics, not through sustainability. I did not consider myself an environmentalist growing up. I feel like it was all about efficiency and like wasting less. At least in my house growing up, we didn't waste anything. We had like 2 pairs of the same pants and I had to wear them over and over again. But it was efficient, right? And so that was kind of the mindset I came from. I studied economics. I worked in international development and economics. And my path into environmentalism and sustainability was really learning how interconnected those things are. Like, I am not a better person than anyone else because I care about the planet. I'm just more aware of the interconnections between economics and sustainability than an average person who studied economics. And I really believe that sustainability is all about equity and environment and economic growth. And so, you know, there's a lot, we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, but there's so many ways in which making a sustainable choice is a smarter economic choice, and that's what makes me really passionate about building this and giving tools to consumers to be able to make those choices for yourself.
So perfect segue. I think most of us have had the experience of buying something that was, let's say, more sustainable or had some more responsible attributes and paid a lot more for it. And it's worth it to some people, but I think that the top of that market is around 20%. It's something like deep green sort of consumers at most. So I'm curious, like, how do you see affordability evolving relative to sustainability, and how is it different than the past, if it is?
I can say like 2 big principles I think of where sustainability and affordability intersect are, first, circularity. What we're talking about today is like sharing more, buying less, repairing, reusing. There's so much stuff already in circulation, like buying new is like the last good option for many, many things. So I think circularity is like one big principle. And the other is electrification, where the price of renewables is lower than the cost of fossil fuels, even with all of the subsidies that fossil fuels have in the United States. That is just inevitable. We were talking about this last night of, renewable energy is cheaper, it's cleaner. And as we move towards a world where we have a lot more AI, I mean, everyone is paying attention to nuclear as an important source of energy going forward. So I think that circularity and electrification are 2 places where it's just a no-brainer. It's sustainable and it's affordable.
Yeah. When I think about affordability and sustainability, I think as like a financial educator and coach, when I start to say sustainability, people are like, oh, she's about to judge me for buying cheap stuff. Like, damn it. But I think what's really important, kind of what Sanchali was saying, is when you think like, can I afford sustainable things? When I think about shopping in general, as a realm of sustainability, I think not buying less necessarily. You could do that, that's part of it, but I think it's also just being more creative with how you consume and where you get stuff and how you get stuff. Like Sanchala was saying, buying new should kind of be like way low on your list for a lot of the things. And I think a lot of people just aren't open to the options and open to the excitement and the fun too that just not buying a thing might afford you. We talk so much about community and community connection. You know, I'm sure folks have talked about Buy Nothing groups and Free Cycle and things like that. Part of why I'm so jazzed on that is, one, you get to consume less, because obviously consuming more means more emissions. You get to consume less, but also you get to make friends. Like, I guess I'm harping because when I say affordability, people are like, the budget girl's gonna get mad at me. No, I want folks to get excited about what else you could do besides buy, what else you could do besides consume, and how much more fun it is to connect and share resources. I think in the activist space, we beat each other over the head with like, it takes a village and be a member. And one of the easiest ways you could do that is to like not buy a toaster oven and see who's fucking around with an old toaster oven in your street. It's fun, it's easy, and it's not actually led by shame or guilt at all. There's so much creativity when it comes to affordability and finance.
So when people are getting started for the first time, as you were saying, with no budget, and I need to have a budget real fast, what's the bridge to doing something that's more sustainable? Like, how do you, I guess, what's the gateway drug here for doing something that's not fast fashion or fast, furniture and so on?
Well, I'll say I'm a big community hoe. I'm always gonna like bang the drum about community. And what I mean by that is like your group chats, your friends. I think the ultimate gateway drug is the social pressure or social funsies that we put upon each other. I personally have a group specifically of finance creator friends. We all came up kind of in the industry together. We're like annoying finfluencers. I'm sorry if that's the first time you ever heard that word. You can just forget it. It's so gross. But we sort of discovered sustainable finance together, and we hold each other accountable. We have these like monthly Zooms, and we take a moment to hold each other accountable to like, what are you learning? What are you sharing with your community? What like bank moves are you teaching to your folks? And it's just like a fun point of entry. And also like, I probably like a lot of you, I have very little fight left in me to be like a one-woman resistance fighter, to do something so new with my finances and put these things on my to-do list. But if you make it a group activity, if it's something my friends are doing too, suddenly I have all the energy in the world. And so I think the easiest way in is to make your friends do it with you. You'd be surprised how many friends maybe were thinking about it privately and are like, oh, thank God, I just need a little accountability. Can me and you text each other like a weird little emoji every time we make a deposit? Like, can we just like group chat this a little bit? I think that's the absolute easiest way versus like telling you a bunch of resources and hoping that you take 15 minutes today to like do that on your laptop, because no one wants to look at a laptop later today, I'm sure.
Yeah, and also if your friends are no good, then you should just join a neighborhood group. If you're like, oh, my friends are not going to be interested in this, join your Buy Nothing group or join your neighborhood WhatsApp group or make one if there isn't one. I definitely started by just lurking in the neighborhood WhatsApp group because I just wanted to see what everyone else was sharing with each other. But eventually you'll get up the courage, or you'll think of something in your house that's like not, that you don't really need it there anymore, and you'll put it on the group. And I feel like the Buy Nothing group and WhatsApp group has been such a great way to connect with neighbors and to also get new stuff that someone else had already.
So Sanchala, walk me through the way Commons works in terms of products. So if I buy something, it's going to look at what I bought and then shame me and say, it'll say there's a better option, right? And you have a different, I guess, categories of these. Do you have a sense of how much more or less is it to buy the better thing?
Yeah, so the app works like a fintech app or a budgeting app you might use. You connect your credit and debit cards, and you can automatically track your purchases. You might just use it for budgeting, like you can see the breakdown of where you're spending and set goals, but you can also toggle into emissions mode, and you can see the carbon footprint behind the things you buy. And you can also earn points for rewards on sustainable purchases like BART, like secondhand clothes. And the thing that's interesting is when we look in aggregate over what people are buying, people are saving money. Shopping secondhand has been a really big thing. Over the last 3 years, I think we've seen over 200% growth in secondhand shopping on the app. Also, refill and reuse has become a lot more popular. I think people are starting to think about plastics in their life. There's lots of good reasons to be doing refill and reuse, and also because it's inherently more sustainable, but also because it's cheaper when you buy in bulk. So those are just a few of the things we're seeing. I don't know if you have specific questions about that.
I guess I'm curious, what are sort of the top things, the top switches that people are making?
E-vehicles and public transportation are back in a bigger way than they were a few years ago. Gasoline is expensive nowadays. I think a lot of people have been thinking about an e-vehicle or a hybrid or moving quickly to go lease one and try it out. So we've definitely seen that changing in the last 6 months or even a year. And then definitely, I think in cleaning and personal care, I think I mentioned that before, but those are places where we're seeing swaps happening a lot faster, shifts towards more sustainable products. And I will say those are actually two of the areas where we also see those products are more expensive, because investing in higher quality ingredients, especially in consumables, like unlike durables, when you invest in high quality durables, they last longer. So like the cost per use can go down over time. But something like consumables, like personal care, cleaning, you use them up. So it is more expensive. Those are places where it is inherently more expensive, but people are making the shift there faster than we would have expected.
And when you think about sort of where the biggest bang for your buck is this going to be from, we talked about sort of buying new versus buying better new. We've also talked about sort of replacing sort of the, I guess, the refill versus the individual products. Where do you think the biggest bang for your buck on both the savings and the environmental impact is?
Goodness, I think I would say investing. I mean, I think for the majority of us, we have our checking account where money moves in and out very quickly, right? You might have a savings, but a lot of us might have an emergency savings. That's the biggest sort of liquid chunk. And then a lot of us have investments where our retirement, ideally, right? Yikes. Our retirement savings is sitting in an investment bank. It's like the largest chunk of money, the largest like number any of us will hold. And all that together is powering. So it's an incredible amount of investment power. We think about, I don't know if we've talked already about the big banks, the JP Morgan and Chase, the Bank of America, the Wells Fargo, the Citibank, blah. And I'm sure we've talked about the fact that these 4 banks are some of the top funders of fossil fuels in the world, right? And they're holding so many of our investment holdings. And so it's like we have so much power in this money that a lot of us are just sort of like shoving away, or like letting our employers just sort of like shave off a chunk and shove to the corner. And I think we could really make an impact if we start thinking about sustainable investing. Now, a lot of us though are employed by employees who are just like, it's a 401k, sign the thing and go away. And some of us are more than happy to be hands off in that. And so you have to a little bit be the squeaky wheel. You have to figure out how to get inside of your 401k or your Roth IRA, look at the options. And it's not necessarily easy. I was just talking with some folks last night about how you have to like be Indiana Jones up in your own shit. Like you have to like go through and unpack it and look at it. And we can talk about some resources of how you can compare the funds going on in there and see like how good or bad it is. But you do have to like DIY that stuff. It is not easy, but it is, I think, the biggest impact we can make in terms of dollars.
I would say a big one is like a thing that people spend a lot of money on is furniture. Actually, like when you move to a new place, if you're furnishing a home, if you have a change in your family and you have to reuse part of your house, people spend a lot of money on furniture. It's like thousands of dollars. And vintage furniture is beautiful. It takes longer. You have to plan for it. You have to be okay with furnishing things slowly. But when you get those pieces, sometimes they're really beautiful. They have a story behind them and they really last. But that's a place where, you know, there's not that many times in your life you really invest in things for your home. And we see people save a lot of money when they buy secondhand.
And in terms of the biggest mistakes that you see people make, what would you put at the top of the list?
Oh man. I would say that a lot of folks come to me as sort of a financial coach or educator and say, like, I'm a really bad spender and I wish I have a shopping addiction or I have this like impulse situation. And the thing that actually Sanchali and I were talking about last night, and the thing that always blows people's minds, is the understanding that your money habits didn't come from nowhere. There is a study that came out, I want to say Cambridge University in 2008, where they found that folks' money attitudes, not necessarily habits, but your attitudes about money, are solidified between the ages of 7 and 9. Because if you think about what was happening in your lives between the ages of 7 and 9, not a lot of us were like being told about sustainable banking or banking at all. If you come from like me, a first-gen immigrant household, it was like the slipper to the face if you talked about money. And so I think the biggest mistake people make is thinking that their financial issues, their financial problems, their stuckness with money has to do with like their bad habits. Really, there's so much to unpack about your financial life and your financial story. And I think to try to fix the habits or to try to make new ones or to try to incorporate new things that are difficult without understanding what got you to the financial decisions that you have is just sort of putting a Band-Aid on top of a bigger wound. May I tell a story, actually? Yes, quick story. So this whole thing is about like trying to find your money story, right? And what I did to write my book was I brought my parents to brunch and I got them a little drunk. And I asked them a bunch of invasive questions to try to figure out their money story. And I asked my mom, what is the first thing you bought with American dollars after you all immigrated from the Philippines? And my mom was like, well, growing up, she's like, your Lola, my grandma, was a tailor, a seamstress, and she would take one dress that my mom got, and every year on her birthday, take it apart and make it into a new dress. Take it apart, make it, okay, circularity queen, like original circularity queen. But my mom felt very resentful of that growing up, and so the first time she got American dollars, she bought Levi jeans. And she told me that, and I was like, oh my God, and like so many bags of Marshalls and TJ Maxx like fluttered before my eyes. I thought my mom was like the most intense consumer. I was so resentful of her. I was like, man, she's like, she doesn't get it. But understanding where that came from, her money story, how it's like an expression of her love, and no one taught her any better, made me feel a lot of financial empathy for her and our choices. And so I don't come at her or anybody else with shame or guilt, and I don't come at myself with shame or guilt. And I hope none of you do either.
I think people worry about getting it all right or all wrong. Like it's all or nothing. Like you're either a vegan or you're not. Like you either thrift or you don't. Like I think that that's not useful. Like there are no binaries anyways, so why apply that to your identity? Like if you can try to eat a little bit more plant-based, do that. Like if you buy plant-based groceries but you eat meat outside, that's fine. That's like one way of eating less meat and being more sustainable for you. Or if you feel like you can thrift for your kids' stuff but you don't really want to do it for yourself, that's a great place to start. Like you don't have to be perfect. And I think that what is hard for me the most is when people make it a moral choice and it says something about who you are as a person. It can be a practical choice. It can be a choice about what you want to do today or what you're ready to do tomorrow. So I think that like, you know, worrying about being perfect or being all or nothing is like the biggest thing I would say. Don't do that to yourself.
So no judgment. Got
No
that for
judgment.
both
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah.
Here. So in that spirit, questions. Was anyone having questions for the panelists? In the back, sir. Yeah, you're gonna have to yell. I don't know.
Thank you. I feel a little bit like a saltwater fish in a freshwater pond because I'm not involved in the industries that you guys are all representing here, but I definitely support what you're trying to do. If we're going to talk about the future, though, it seems to me we have to think about the young generations, the children, the youth, and how do we bring them along into something like sustainability and circular economy. And so that's what I'm here representing today. Shameless pitch here that I'm working with a group called Oakland Goes Outdoors, and we got 6,200 Oakland Unified School District middle school students out into nature this year, and we're doing that every year. There is no better, as you all know, there is no more circular economy than the economy of nature. And the work that you're doing here and what you represent here has some real serious competition. As you know, this is an extractive industry. It's extracting young people's attention. So I'm going to encourage you all to think about how can we do more for getting children exposed to the circular economies of nature. And I guess I'll let it be at that. And there isn't really a question there, but I think you can take it from there with something.
It's a great cause. Yeah. Please address your question in the form of a question.
Oh, can I add to that actually?
You want to answer? Go for it.
Yes. So true to my rich auntie in training wannabe title, I think one of the most amazing things I've seen, I have 4 nieces, and the older they get and the smarter they get, and actually the more time they spend on the stress box attached to their bodies, the angrier they get. And they're texting me like, Auntie, so if I get a credit card and I don't pay it back, it takes me a while to pay it back, they charge me? Wait a minute. If I go below my balance in a bank account, they charge me more? That's unfair, isn't it? And I'm like, that's unfair. Let's get angry. And so I think the way that maybe this isn't necessarily like peace oriented, but when the babies get angry, I fan the flames. And then I go, and that's so right. Here's some other stuff you need to know. And here's how I think we can fix it. Here's how you can make like first decisions of the first bank they ever pick. That actually can be like fighting words against the big 4, because we could pick another bank because they don't charge you that crazy stuff and they're not extractive with their overdraft fees. So that really resonates with me because the babies are smart and we just need to back them up with the resources.
We got a question right here.
Go for it.
I loved what you guys shared about the accountability and the social nature of connecting with your local neighborhood and your friends. I'm curious, in an app like Commons, which is such a forum to really solidify that data, if you could create a social component that is accelerating the momentum of proving either a reduction amongst your friends via the personalized data you're willing to share with, I don't know, 4 or 5 close friends, where you have those personal relationships and can be that encouragement towards that reduction and that sharing economy that you're trying to enable. So has that been something that you guys are entertaining as another layer within the app?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I mean, it's kind of interesting because we are a personal finance app. There's not like a ton of examples of social personal finance apps, except for maybe the Venmo feed that like you never really want to know what everyone's spending money on.
Journalist's best friend, actually.
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I have to ask you about that later. But I mean, to start with, we do a lot of collective stats, and every month we have a collective challenge. So this is sort of like our first foray into creating more social community within app users. So for instance, this month, our challenge is circular economy. You make one purchase in the circular economy and you get extra rewards. And if the whole community achieves our goal together, we all get extra rewards. So we have that every month where we have a different theme, kind of encourages you to try something new with other people. And we do track, we actually are going to publish our 2025 impact report soon, but we found on average people on Commons last year saved $5 a day by lowering their emissions in different ways. Secondhand was really popular, electrification was really popular. So there's some of these kinds of like interesting collective stats that we can put out there, and that's 10% lower carbon footprints across the whole community last year. But I really love that idea, and I think there's something really interesting about actually like personal finance apps, maybe they could have a collective element to it because there is a collective element to the impact of our spending, and that's how Commons is different from other finance apps. So it's definitely something we're thinking about more right now through the challenges feature. That's sort of the first foray, but I think that's super interesting, and we'd love to get into that.
Next question. In the back.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Sydney. I work for Fairly Made, which is an impact intelligence platform for fashion brands. My question is around kind of the business case for sustainability. I feel like in the US especially, there's kind of a narrative that sustainability is a nice to have or a luxury item. I personally don't feel that way, and I'm sure you guys don't as well, but what do you think is kind of the best way to communicate to big brands or businesses that sustainable choices can lead to better business decisions and that profit and purpose don't have to conflict?
When I think about what I've heard from folks, this isn't necessarily for business, but for on the personal level, I think I hear from folks that they're like, I'd like to make the sustainable choice, but there's already this like long-going myth of like the sustainable choice is the more expensive choice, or at least even in the banking world, the sustainable choice is the womp womp choice. Like, you want me to leave the big 4, of course, but they have the good fees and they have the, they have the Chase points and they have all the good stuff that I want. And there's this like misunderstanding that the credit unions or the smaller banks are like wooden lean-tos with no customer service. And the truth is that so many, like Sanjali was saying, it's not either or. It's not black and white. There are so many banks that are sort of more in the gray-green area that are doing better than the Big Four. So there are options there that are simpler than just being like, well, is it evil but sexy, or like good but gross? I think we have to sort of break that binary of like sustainability means more expensive. I was also reading something this morning by Ross Gay. I'm reading Inflicting Joy. And he talks about how he builds a garden and people are like, wow, what a privilege that you're able to like have a garden near you and pick your own fruit. And essentially he's like, you have been disprivileged. The fact that you don't have access to a garden, you don't have access to fruit. We have been disprivileged with the fact that you don't have access to free and accessible healthcare and all these things. And so I try to also flip it on the head of like, it's effed up that you feel like you have to be in a different tax bracket to be sustainable. You should be questioning the system of that as opposed to our own person-to-person like guilt and shame.
I think one practical way businesses could think about that is less about, say, like average basket size and more about retention or like longevity of customers. I think that that's a shift that a lot of companies, especially consumer companies, are starting to really embrace, especially in the current economy where it's really expensive to lose customers over time. So if we think about, like, we want our customers to be alive. We want them to have safe and healthy products in their homes. We want them to live on a planet where they continue to have money to buy things in the future. And then also thinking about like retaining a customer for a really long time means bringing them back for repair services, means bringing them back for secondhand purchases, keeping those secondhand purchases within our revenue stream. Those kinds of things, I think, are how businesses can start to shift mindsets. It's like, we're here to build a business that lasts, not a business that goes up and then down very quickly. So I hope that more businesses will think about retention metrics and underlying like long-term profitability rather than like getting one transaction on a single day.
Makes sense. Any other questions?
We have time for maybe one more question.
We have one more in the front.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Here you go.
Thank you, guys. This is such an enlightening talk. I actually have a question for Sanjali. So you say you studied economics, right? And that there's this intersection with an environment. I want to know your opinion on how environment can not be a subtopic in economics, but actually be a topic that we kind of take in, and like how companies can use environment for their resources and whatnot.
I think that coming back to something I said before, like the light bulb moment for me was when I realized like environmentalism isn't separate from economics. It's about having strong economic systems that last. Some of our core economic indicators might have to change over time for us to be able to truly embrace that. But if we look at economies that we consider successful, like the Nordic countries, for instance, they have circularity embedded into their economies in a way that we don't yet. And I think that coming back to like the theme of today too, like waste is extremely economically inefficient. It's like really not useful for us to make stuff and then throw it away and not be able to use those resources again. And then we have to pay to deal with the waste over time. Like waste management is also incredibly expensive. So I think that when we think about bringing environmentalism into the mainstream, I think it has to do with just using economic terms to describe things that people typically have used maybe like crunchier terms to describe in the past. The same things explained in the terms of like gas is really expensive. We have this other renewable resource that's really cheap, and it doesn't go up when the Strait of Hormuz is blocked. Like it's really, really great. Let's just talk about it in economic terms. Like I don't even need to talk about it in planetary terms. In a lot of ways, I think it's just like speaking the right language for businesses to understand. So to me, that's really powerful. And of course, it has to do with our connection to the earth. Like nature is beautiful. Being outside is super important. We all want access to nature. But again, that doesn't make it about the trees. It makes it about us and our lives on earth. So that's how I think about Earth Day too, tomorrow, so exciting. Earth Day is Life on Earth Day. It's not about like the planet that we walk on or the concept of like a solar system. It's like our lives, our interactions, the ability to hang out here today, to have amazing food, amazing conversation. Life on Earth is what's worth fighting for.
Thank you both. That was great. Fascinating conversation. Thank you for those great questions.
All right, all right. It is Earth Day Eve. That's so excited. We got to stay up. We got to count down at midnight. Guys, we're on to our final fireside conversation with someone really, really amazing. And I want to, in this final conversation, we're talking about community. And she's been doing amazing things in the music industry. So I want to do this thing that I did a little bit ago, and it worked so well, okay? This is going to require everyone's effort, okay? Everyone in? Everyone in? Here's what's going to happen, okay? We are going to try to come up with band names. Maybe they exist. Maybe we tweak them that are very clearly climate band names, okay? Like the Beach Boys, right? Green Day. That's basically tomorrow. Tomorrow's Green Day. Smashing Pumpkins. That's composting, okay? You could do even, are you ready? Compost Malone. So before we get to the panel, okay, this is called community. Can we, as a crowd, come up with a few band names that are climate names? I'm going to venture into the crowd. Band names, you can... The Recyclables, just going a new band name. Going rogue, I love that. She's like, how about the Circular Economies? Sure, yeah. You too? In what way? Oh, like just like personal, like you're also involved. You too. That's great. That's good. She loves it. Anything else? Any other band names? People at home, what do you think? Are you awake? Said Earth, Wind, and Fire. Earth, Wind, and Fire. Really good. Really good. Any other ones? The Beatles? Absolutely. Soundgarden. All right, now we're warming up. Now we're ready. This next conversation is all about community. It's all about the things we can do. I'm so thrilled that she's here. One of our speakers is Maggie Baird. Can you imagine? I know a lot of people who've raised one Grammy and Academy Award winner. She's raised two. That's double. That's absolutely amazing. And more than that, she's also just this incredible activist, has been doing the work, founded Support and Feed in 2020, a nonprofit focused on innovative intersectional strategies to ensure marginalized communities have access to nourishing plant-based foods. And leading this fireside chat with her, okay, is the director of content here at Commons, and she's the host of the Second Nature podcast, Caitlin Cunningham. So please welcome Maggie and Caitlin.
Hello. Hello. So excited to talk to you about community. It feels like every single panel has touched on that, and that's a big part of the center of what you do at Support and Feed. So much of what we've talked about here is about the climate crisis, obviously, but there's also food insecurity, and I think on the surface, maybe not for folks here, but on the surface, those things may not seem like they're connected, but a lot of the work that you do at Support and Feed is about connecting the dots for people between the climate crisis and food insecurity. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about that, about how you connect the dots for people.
Yeah, it's a topic that is just inextricably entwined, and we don't really discuss it enough. You know, our food choices affect the climate crisis affects our food choices. People who suffer from food insecurity and food inequity are disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis. If you're living in an area that is a food apartheid, systemically cut off from access to nutritious food, you're probably living in an area that's also 2 degrees hotter in the summer, lacks trees, lacks vegetation. There are civilizations and countries in the world that have already been destroyed by the climate crisis, and what we are eating is partly responsible for that. So trying to make the connection that every time we serve a meal to someone who may be insecure in their food situation, we can also make a choice that's more friendly to our climate and more friendly to their health. In the case of Support and Feed, also supports a small business in the local area. So our mission at Support and Feed really is the intersection of all of those. None of those stand alone.
Yeah, and all of your work at Support and Feed focuses on plant-based foods. so much of our family histories and cultures and traditions are centered around food, and a lot of that food, at least in my family, is meat and like animal-based products. How do you broach that? How do you broach the fact that so much of it feels like so much of our identity is rooted in food? How do you broach that when you're asking people to perhaps change something about themselves, really?
It's a good question and a fair question. We deal with it in different ways, though, depending on who the audience is, right? Just to back up a little, we talk a lot about the fossil fuel industry. The really powerful industry is the animal agriculture industry. And I think it's fair, as I've heard before, that you don't have to be perfect in your dietary choices or anything, but I do think it's really important to start to analyze how much we have been influenced, one might say indoctrinated, into our food choices by a system designed to lie to us. I think when people start to know that, it sort of changes the way you think about things. You go, wait, is it actually true that this is the healthiest way to eat? Or have I just been told that by an industry that doesn't want me to eat this way? Is this an industry that is supporting animal agriculture at the destruction of our planet rather than farmers who grow crops for humans who are only 3% of $1 billion industry, right? So I think part of it's mental, but that's to our kind of audience, right? So we have Support and Feed fans here, which is so awesome. But we have this amazing access to the music industry and fans in the music industry. To that audience, we try to tell the story of why these choices matter and what is our personal responsibility. And can you take the Support and Feed pledge to eat just one fully plant-based meal a day? So on that side of it, we're really, really telling the whole story and what our privilege can allow us to do. Now, when we're talking about organizations where we deliver food, that's a different story. And so to that end, we work almost exclusively with community organizations. Occasionally, we are forward-facing, like in the case of the fires in Eaton Canyon. We've been feeding people in Altadena for 2 years, although even a lot of that is with other orgs. So we're working with community organizations that are doing amazing work. So we're not really just going to go in and say, change the way you eat. We're going to say, what do your families like to eat? What are the things we can help you with? What would you like to try? What else can we deliver? There's an org that we really love, we work with all the time, and in the beginning, they literally did not want food from us, even though everyone wanted food, They were like, we don't want your food. We're like, okay, well, we have burritos, we have pizza, we have donuts. They say, we'll take the donuts. So we just led with donuts, but we were like, do you want to try anything else? And they literally led us. They taught us. They were like, we like this burrito, we don't like this burrito, we'll like this, we'll serve this to our families, not this. And we learned so much from that. Yeah. And so that's really what it looks like. In every city, in every org, it's going to be different. We're going to try to address what people are comfortable with, but trying to break through the misconceptions people have about plant-based food, so that when you say, hey, can we bring food to your organization because we know you're looking for it, and they say no because it says plant-based, well, that's something we have to overcome. We have to go, well, did you know this is plant-based? Did you know an apple is plant-based? So it's leading with love. I mean, we've had this is another story, but we do culinary trainings on the road with arenas, and I've had culinary chefs say to me, I don't eat any plant-based food. And I'm like, really?
Guacamole?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, salad, the tomato. And they're like, nope, not at all. So there's a lot to overcome. There's a lot, again, kind of a lot of indoctrination. And I want to say one more thing about culture, is that culture is, some of that's relatively recent. What is really is comfort, what feels familiar to us? What did we grow up with? But even generationally back, just 2 generations, that looks extremely different. And you have to go, why did that even happen? My culture, because I grew up in Western Colorado in the 70s, my culture was a boxed package of tacos, and a, you know, chow mein in a can. Like, is that culture? Like, in my case, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't call that my culture. So I think there's also this somewhat unraveling of like, what's just comfort and familiar to you? And if that's impacting not only the planet, but your health. You know, a lot of communities have been led to believe that they are destined to poor health. But some of that is just diet and what is made available to them. You know, if you don't have a grocery store in your town, if you have 1 million fast food restaurants, that's not your culture. You know, that's what you've been deprived of. You know, we try to say, like, you deserve plant-based food. You know, you deserve healthy food. You know, it's not a punishment.
Yeah. No, I love that. And thinking about that too, thinking about traditions, it kind of forces you to think about, like, what is the thing I really love about this? Do I really love my grandma's mac and cheese with bacon, or do I like eating it with my grandma?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You sort of start to unpack that. And I think we have the opportunity too to make new traditions now. You know, like, people can learn plant-based recipes from you guys and take that forward into their families.
And I also think we are all kind of limited. Like, when I moved to New York City in 1981, I had Indian food for the first time in Little India, and I was like, what is this? This is now my favorite, has been my favorite food for the rest of my life. I never had it before, you know, and just think of that in our own lives. You know, think of if you're living this diet, whatever it may be, that has been what you've exposed to, that means there's this world of culinary beauty that you've never had. And that's what I think about plant-based food, you know. I mean, the amounts of just fruits and vegetables that are shockingly new to us still, you know, and, you know, because we just don't cook with them. You know, there are 3 meals a day to fill, but there's also only 3 meals a day to fill. You know what I mean? And if you're like, I always eat this, then you haven't made room for this unbelievable bounty that the earth has offered us.
Yeah. And so much of that too is tied up actually in our supply chain a bit, right? Like, I heard a podcast about just there are so many types of bananas, but we just eat the one that we have for various reasons. Some of them political, which leads me to my next question, just that there are right now strains on the food supply chain for various reasons, the Strait of Hormuz, also climate change. Are you guys seeing any of that strain coming through in your work at Support and Feed?
Well, we definitely are. I mean, number one is just more people than ever, as we all know, who need food. You know, people are really suffering. You know, people who are fully employed and don't make enough to buy groceries, you know. So we see it, I think, probably the most on that just demand is just through the roof. But there are predictions. You know, I heard that potatoes may be gone in 20 years. You know, climate change is wiping out a lot of our food. It's urgent. It's urgent. I just want to say, like, I read Diet for a Small Planet in 1975. You know, 1975, like, this is not a shock. It was all predicted and it's all coming true. But yeah, crops are less available. You know, where I feel it is more like on the strategic planning of Support and Feed, because even in 2020, when we started and we were doing our strategic planning, you know, there was some like optimism and, you know, oh, we can make this better world. And now it's like, okay, unnatural disasters, extreme weather events, by the law of nature, were 3 a year. Now they are every other week. That's not hyperbole. They literally are every other week. So we have to add into our strategic planning, how do we cope with extreme weather events, you know, feeding people in Altadena, feeding people in Tennessee from the floods. So these are the kind of things we see climate change affecting our food systems. We know there are going to be shortages, but also we're wiping out communities. And most crisis operations are designed to come in and help people very quickly. And those are wonderful organizations, and we can all name them. But I can tell you in Altadena, a year later, people are still struggling. You know, people who didn't have insurance, you know, or maybe couldn't live in their home that didn't burn down, but they couldn't live in it because it's toxic. You know, people really, really need services much, much longer. And so that's where we see a lot of the impact.
Yeah, and that's sustainability too, being able to sustain people through the years and years that it takes to get to that recovery point.
Yeah. And can I just say, just in the communication, there are very calculated organizations, operations, trying to control the narrative around extreme weather events. So, you know, when there's a mass shooting and then there's thoughts and prayers, and if you say something about guns, you're told you're political. It's the same with climate. You bring up climate after an extreme weather event and people are like, oh, this is not the time. People have died. And like, this is the time. But they're calculated, is a calculated effort to get us not to get that in the narrative. And the narrative is chosen for us by people in the communications sector that just get it to be not on the climate crisis.
I think we have so much opportunity in our own little communities, right, to start spreading that, because it's easier for me to hear that from you sitting with you right here than it is to like find it through the course of all the news that I'm seeing in my feed. You and I talked a lot about our circles of influence, and you're lucky to have a very large circle of influence with your daughter. If you wanted to talk a little bit about that and just like how folks can, even if your circle of influence is your group chat with your 4 friends or your church or your workplace, how you can come to the table, not even with ideas, but just conversations, and to kind of start with people. And you guys do that a lot on Billy's tour.
I love it though. I love the idea of just being where you are, because before Billy was in the music industry, I was doing this already, you know, in our homeschool group and our, you know, I mean, my friends remind me, they're like, oh, I remember that thing you said in like 1982 about, you know, red peppers, and you know, I don't know, it's sort of, you do it wherever you are, wherever you work, wherever you live. You bring sustainability in that, whether that's making sure there's plant-based food as the majority of your food at your luncheon or your gala. You know how many galas I have to go to that say they're like, I went to one recently, I'm gonna out them. They literally, this person got up and stood up and said, we are a LEED certified venue, and with pride told us about that. And then they served everybody a big piece of steak this big. If you're worried about AI, you have to know that what you eat is much more impactful than that. You know, if you're worried about, you have to put food into the conversation. These kind of things shock me. So I would say wherever you are, if you're on the board of something, if you're planning an event, make sure that that as the minimum, largely plant-based. Largely, if it can't be all the way, okay, but make sure that it's largely. These are the things we all can control. And that's in everything we do. So in the music industry, I did sort of find myself, you know, yikes, having to learn a whole new industry and be quite shocked by, you know, what I saw as a lack of sustainability awareness. And, you know, I will say that for the first few years, nobody did listen to us. You know, really, I mean, I really remember like being in a back room of some venue Billy was playing and like saying to someone like, I feel like I'm pushing a boulder up a hill, you know, alone. Like nobody would listen. But then, you know, Billy got very famous and people started listening, which was great. And they started making changes and everybody on her team got involved. Like everybody. You know, we're not gonna see merch shown to us if it's not like the most sustainable option, and we're not gonna, you know, the vinyl is gonna be recycled vinyl, and everyone knows, you know, and everyone, and that's really important. Everyone doing it, you know, just empowering a team and say this is a priority for us. So whatever sector of our company you are the one that's going to guide us in making this choice. And then the fortunate thing was, of course, Billy and Phineas lived this way too, and so then they let their platform be a part of it. I don't really think that every artist necessarily has to carry this flag, but it's important that some artists do and say, hey, this is where you can make change and kind of set a new status quo. But every artist should be doing it whether they're carrying the flag or not, right? It should just be what we're doing. Arenas should just be doing it. Teams should be doing it. So, but yes, we've been lucky to have this very large platform. And, you know, and Billy and Phineas have been willing to let that be true. Because it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to find that balance, and they were talking a little bit on the panel, like there's this, especially if you're, you know, as famous as Billy and Phineas are, you're sort of worried about becoming this type of person to everyone or letting that be your entire brand, even as just like a person in your friend group, much less like at that scale. So it is a careful balance to find. I want to.
Well, can I say partly because you don't want to be dismissed, you know? You don't want to be dismissed and like, oh, that's her, so I don't have to do it. Oh, we don't have to take her seriously because she always talks about that, or she always. So you're walking this balance of saying, like, I want to normalize this. I want this, again, to be status quo. It's not just me, you know?
I hope it's becoming a little cooler to care about stuff. I remember when I was a teenager and it was like not cool to care about absolutely anything.
That's a very good point. I mean, I do think they really do care. First of all, we have saddled our youth with a horrible set of circumstances, you know? I mean, what they are looking at, the climate anxiety, the anxiety about all the major issues they're dealing with. So we have saddled them with that. And I don't really subscribe to the youth will save us, because it's our job, you know? It's our job. If we're still kicking, you better be going into your grave fighting, you know what I mean? Like, you don't get to stop and let young people suffer, you know? Because we did it. We did it. So I don't even know what the question was, because now I'm fired up.
This is great. This is great. This leads really well into my last question, which is that people are feeling more discouraged and isolated than ever. And I think that doing volunteer work, doing mutual aid work is a big part of getting you out of that isolation, but also like finding hope. So I wondered, I think it's easy to show up to that first meeting. How do you get people to keep showing up? How do you get people to keep showing up years after the fires, right? How do you get people to keep remaining passionate and feeling involved in this thing that they're, you know, it's like life is really hard. You know, you got your 9 to 5, you got kids or whatever's going on. Like, how do you keep motivating people to show up for this cause?
Such a good question. I mean, I think it feeds itself, you know, because, and it's Joan Baez, I think, who's credited with saying that, you know, the antidote to action is the antidote to despair, right? Something I might be paraphrasing, but I think that I think we get back as much as we give, 100%. I think volunteering, taking action, I mean, going to a protest, all of these things, you actually feel better. Because part of what feels so scary is the lack of control that we have, especially now. Especially we're like, what is happening in the government? I didn't think this was possible, right? I thought we had checks and balances. I didn't think, you know what I mean? So you feel 100% powerless. So how do you take back power? You do something. You do something. You take action. And so I think it's the doing that keeps you involved. I do think as an organization at Support and Feed, what we've learned is we really need to help foster community within our volunteers. Because our volunteers, sometimes they're doing things like interacting with the public like they are here today. Sometimes they're like solo driving food from A to B, and they're not maybe getting that same connection. So creating opportunities for volunteers to get to know each other, to share their experiences, to feel involved, to feel appreciated, because you know, there's so many cliches right now because they're all true. Like, we have an epidemic of loneliness, right? And so can we also, if our mission is intersectional, can we also add into that community building? So I think we're learning, like, how can we help keep our volunteers afloat? How can we support and, you know, make this a place of joy and meaning in an era of real anxiety and trauma? But it's an effort, and also helping community. Like, you know, when extreme weather events do happen, we do get more donations, you know, and fortunately that allows us to support that additional work. But getting people to go, it's still there. We're still there. We're still feeding people. People still need food. Climate crisis isn't going anywhere. That is very hard. And also funds are tight, and funds have a lot of different places to go. So vigilance.
Vigilance, I love that. Well, let's go to some questions in the audience, yeah? Does anyone have a question?
Hello, Maggie. It's Valerie, and I'm very proud of Support and Feed, and it's an amazing organization. And I had just had 2 questions. What are your long-term goals, and what vision are you working towards with Support and Feed, like the future with Support and Feed?
Whoa. Well, long-term goals is to maintain all the programs we've had, add more cities. I have some bigger, loftier dreams. You know, we work in collaboration so much, not only with all the organizations we feed, but also with a lot of other organizations like FarmLink, Sharing Access, Food Forward. I would love to see more coordination in our food system, because we didn't even talk about waste, because of course waste is a massive problem, and food excess. So I have a dream that someday, you know, all the farm food that is going to be destroyed, which now has a stream which goes through organizations like FarmLink, comes to organizations like ours that distribute it to other organizations. There's a missing gap at the end, because no matter how hard you try, there's still more. And the answer to that would be cooking it and serving it to people who need food. So like that is a dream of ours, to get to that one more step in the circular mission would be nothing ever goes to waste and it gets fed to people.
Thank you so much for being here. My name is Allie, and I am working with my neighborhood. We formed a sort of mutual aid society on 39th and MLK, which is in the Flats in Oakland. I don't know if people know Oakland, you know where that is. It used to be called Ghost Town. I've been there for 22 years. We've been trying to get a 6,000 square foot vacant lot to grow community food for our neighbors, our elders, our young people have a place, a cooling place when it gets hotter and hotter. And the land's been vacant since 1932, and every time we raise enough money, the city or the county, unfortunately, makes the land unavailable, or someone comes in and buys it and just destroys the land. And so we've been trying to just self-organize and figure out what are the legal or, you know, squatter rights, or what can we do to grow food in our own neighborhood. So we would love to, you know, hear ideas about how we can reclaim vacant land that's unused in Oakland to grow food for our communities, if you have any thoughts on that. Land access, people power.
I don't know that I'm an expert in that, but I will say I do think it's extremely important. I think, unfortunately, as you all in this room know, we have passed the era of just looking to mitigate the climate crisis, and now we have to adapt to it, which is a terrible burden, because we don't want to adapt and normalize and not keep mitigating, but one of those adaptation is growing our own food, and it's really essential. I have a lettuce grow in my backyard, hydroponic farm in my backyard, and you know, like I'm prepared to a certain degree, but this is extremely important. I think, you know, going to government and trying to make this case that we have to have more self-sufficient food systems, and community gardens are one of the hugest answers that we have, and creating shade for the heat. So I don't have a lot of strategies for you, but I think you're right. Okay. Maybe talk to Alice Waters.
I'm going to the back.
I mean, that's her deal.
I'll get there eventually.
Yeah, it is. I know it's a question of privilege, and I think that's something we really struggle with, you know, is that these issues climate especially can seem very privileged, you know, and we are privileged to even be able to talk about it and think about it and have the time, but everybody cares and is affected by it, and I agree with you. There is you know, like we'd like to talk about like frozen food is great. Frozen food sometimes is amazingly nutritious and convenient. And there are some places where like they look down, like, you know what I mean? Like we have to embrace our real food system and not an imaginary system. So I agree with you.
Hi, Maggie. Thank you so much for your talk. I had a big question from the international standpoint. I'm South African born, and I have a sustainable organization where we work with low-income women artisans, and they're upcycling in their communities, and we're trying to, basically we get their goods here in front of consumers who care about sustainability and economic development. Now, my question for you is, for Support and Feed, you guys are doing such incredible work. And while the need here in the US is so dire, gosh, the founder in me is dying for more organizations like yours to kind of extend into other parts of the world where food insecurity is greater. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on kind of bringing that model across the seas?
I think one thing that we've learned is that you have to know what you don't know, and we don't currently have the expertise to do that. Even how we work in Europe and Australia is different than we work in the US. So in Europe, Support and Feed might be working with an organization just to help them promote more plant-based food, or make recipe cards or cooking demos to kind of try to promote it. So every country has kind of a different system and a different ecosystem. I think that's a wonderful dream, and I would love to do it. We'd have to expand so much bigger than we are. I mean, we've been lucky, to be honest, to have a very good, reputation and social outreach, but we are not a largely funded organization. You know what I mean? And just what I would love to have happen is that our influences larger organizations, because there are people with massive amount of funds and massive operations, and I'd like that what we are doing might change what they are doing and influence that. I think that's maybe where we can be more immediately effective.
I think we have time for one more. Anybody?
Hi, you mentioned earlier, and this kind of just got me thinking, or you talked about AI, and that's something that I've always talked about, and I was just ranting about this, about AI and versus agricultural use, and obviously AI is really bad, and I feel like we've been having a lot of conversations about how horrible AI is, and it's kind of belittled our conversations about fossil fuels and the agricultural industry, especially with water uses. AI uses this much water while they're eating a cheeseburger which has this much water, which is so much more. So how do we kind of recenter our conversations to include AI, but also kind of be there are other things also still happening that are also negatively impacting the environment?
Well, I think that's a whole panel. I mean, it's such an interesting subject. We wrestle with it. We had a conversation about it today for Support and Feed of where would AI benefit us so much that it would be worth it? And there are places where it absolutely will, right? If it can free up our funds to feed people because we saved so much time on, something we created in a way that, I think it's making those individual decisions. And AI has a good side and a bad side, and we're all terrified of the bad side, and rightly so, and scared out of our minds. But then there's all these good things about it where it could be, could make, it helps us know all the solutions that exist, But we've actually known a lot of those solutions for decades, and we just still haven't done them. So will we do them now? I think what the point you bring up, though, is that there are places where we just don't want to talk about it. And I think that's food. It goes back to the start of our conversation. We are married to our comfort. And I've seen so many interesting panels today, and I think how do we get people to consume less, and how do we get people to invest here? It's we have to give people, we were talking about this last night, we have to give people the same fix that they get when they push that Amazon button, and they buy something and it's coming, and they're like, I feel really good tonight because something's coming, we have to make them have that feeling in another way. And we have to give them that comfort that they're getting from their familiar food, and we've got to help them see that their comfort can be in another way. So it's a really deep question, and I do think, if nothing else, AI and the fact that people are justifiably terrified of it and worried about it can also be okay, but if you're talking about water, please look at your hamburger, you know? So we can maybe open people's eyes because they are seeing this and they don't want to see this. So I don't know if that's an answer, but it is a very important topic that we can't really talk about enough, and we desperately need legislation surrounding it, which we probably won't get.
On that note, thank you guys so much for your questions.
Thank you.
And thank you, Maggie and Caitlin. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, one more. Yeah. One person started that clap revolution. Before we go to the happy hour, we want to invite back on the people who really made this event happen, and that is Alon from ThreadUp and Sanchali from Commons for closing few words, and then we will make sure that we spend a little bit of time connecting with each other, having some delicious snacks, having some delicious food.
Thank you, Esteban. Wow. Thank you, everybody. We made it to the end. I guess I didn't know Billie Eilish's mama was a food revolutionary. That was awesome. Really inspiring, and I learned a ton. I think my kind of closing thought here is the idea of doing this collaboration between Commons and ThreadUp really started about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, when we were in San Francisco for the same event, essentially, right? And I was so inspired by it, but also jealous that like San Francisco gets this climate week, and we're this Oakland company, proud Oakland company, and we saw that there was another proud Oakland company like doing something really interesting in terms of like a sustainability conversation. And so I think we had like a conversation about it, and it just sort of felt right. And you know, it's been a year in the making. A lot of hard work has been put in by a lot of people that put this together. So I'm just really proud of the last couple days, and appreciate that we did it for Oakland. We got the mayor of Oakland here, and that's an accomplishment. So, and you guys were all here with us doing it. So thank you all for showing up. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you all for coming. I mean, events like this are nothing without the people who attend. We'd just be in a room by ourselves. So thank you so much for coming, for bringing your energy, your questions, your ideas for how we're going to bring this forward. And our hope is leaving this, you feel a little bit less alone. Like hopefully you met some friends, some people you're going to connect with later, and also a little more full of ideas and encouragement for continuing to live in the circular economy and bringing it to life. So my challenge to all of you is thinking of one thing that you're going to get in the circular economy after this that you weren't planning to before, whether that's repairing it, sharing it, rebuying it. So think about that, and if you do it this month, then you'll get extra points in Commons. So wonderful to see you all. Enjoy drinks and food, and I know Esteban is going to tell us more about all of our great things to do after this.
We give it up for Esteban too,
Yeah.
and Kestrel,
And
Kestrel as well. You guys did a great job.
Well, before we have to thank the usual folks. Thank you, Commons. Thank you, ThreadUp. Thank you, Ritual. Thank you, Koyuchi. Thank you, our food sponsor, Good Eggs, which we can like now enjoy even more of their food, and our media sponsor, Grist. And what's gonna happen now is we can keep hanging out here, and there's gonna be food and drinks. My hope is like that. I mean, you said this so beautifully, but my hope is that the world feels especially dark. I feel like that's all the conversations we're having. Just in whispers, we're like, oh, it's really bad. And my hope is that we remember everyone in this room and everyone who isn't in this room who's like really fighting to make it right. So I think that is so good. I think that is so beautiful. And I think what better way to end something about the circular economy than all of us like coming together and recognizing that, of course, nature has no waste and nature is beautiful in this way. And also nature works together in like profound ways that we don't even understand. So part of modeling that is probably working together and getting to know each other. So we get to hang out here until 7. So we get like kind of like, like a loose hour, which is really fun to do that. And a bunch of the panelists and people who spoke are still here. So connect with them, chat with the folks here. We will hopefully see you next year. This is amazing. Enjoy the rest of SF Climate Week. And thank you for being an amazing audience. We'll see you next time. Thank you. We've done it.